The twin suns of Tatooine beat down mercilessly on the endless dune sea. But the heat that scorched the sand that day came from above. No ship appeared on Imperial scanners. No hyperspace signature registered across any relay station. Yet something fell from the void between realities. A blazing comet of golden energy that screamed across the sky and carved a blackened trench half a kilometer long into the desert. When the sand finally settled, a figure rose from the crater's center. Vegeta, Prince of all Saiyans, stood and surveyed his surroundings with barely contained fury. His white and gold battle armor was cracked along the shoulder, his gloves scorched from the dimensional breach that had ripped him from his universe. The last thing he remembered was attempting instant transmission during a training session with that fool Kakarot. But something had interfered. A surge of unfamiliar energy that felt nothing like Kai. It had grabbed him mid-transport and hurled him through a kaleidoscope of collapsing realities. Now he stood in a desert that stretched endlessly in every direction beneath two suns. The air tasted wrong. The energy felt wrong. When Vegeta tried to sense power levels, he felt something else entirely. A pervasive field of energy that seemed to flow through everything, connecting the grains of sand, the distant rock formations, even the pathetic life forms he could barely detect on the edge of his awareness. "Where the hell am I?" he muttered, clenching his fists. His ki responded instantly, white aura crackling around his body, but it felt heavier somehow, as if moving through water instead of air. The energy drain was subtle but noticeable. Whatever this place was, it was interfering with his power. Vegeta's scouter had been destroyed in the crossing, so he lifted into the air the old-fashioned way, Kai propelling him above the desert. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon. There, in the distance, structures, civilization. Primitive by the look of it, but civilization nonetheless. Someone there would have answers. Someone there would tell him how to leave this backwater planet, and if they refused, he'd blast the information out of them. As he flew toward the distant settlement, Vegeta noticed something disturbing. His energy reserves were depleting faster than normal flight should require. Not drastically, he still had more than enough power to level a continent if necessary. But the difference was measurable. That strange, pervasive energy field was constantly pushing against his ki, like an immune system rejecting a foreign presence. "Ch, I'll adapt," he growled to himself. He was a Saiyan warrior, elite among elites. A little environmental resistance wouldn't slow him down. What Vegeta didn't know was that his arrival had sent ripples through the Force, unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. On distant Coruscant, Darth Vader paused mid-step in the Imperial Palace, one hand rising to his mask as if struck. On Dagobah, Yoda's eyes snapped open from meditation, his expression troubled. And in the depths of space, Emperor Palpatine's yellow eyes gleamed with sudden interest as he felt something impossible touch the edges of his awareness. A presence that burned with power, but existed somehow outside the Force entirely. The Saiyan Prince descended toward the outskirts of what he would soon learn was called Mos Eisley. Smoke rose from cantinas, and moisture evaporators hummed their endless song. Speeders kicked up dust along filthy streets where humans and aliens mingled in the business of survival. Vegeta touched down in an alley between two buildings, his boots crunching on sand and broken glass. A Rhodian scavenger stumbled upon him immediately, chattering something in a language Vegeta didn't understand. The green-skinned alien pointed at his armor, then at a pile of scrap metal, clearly trying to negotiate some kind of trade. Vegeta's response was to swat the creature aside with casual force, sending it tumbling across the alley. He stepped onto the main street, and the crowd parted instinctively. Something in Vegeta's bearing, the way he moved, the cold calculation in his eyes, the barely restrained violence in every gesture, marked him as predator in a settlement full of prey. Conversations died as he passed. Hands moved to weapons, but didn't draw them. Not yet. Vegeta approached the nearest structure that looked official. A cantina, judging by the noise and the smell of alcohol that drifted through its entrance. Information always flowed in places like this. Whether it was a bar on Earth or apparently this cesspool of a town. He'd find whoever was in charge, extract the data he needed, and be off this miserable rock within the hour. He pushed through the entrance, and the music stopped. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Dozens of eyes turned toward the Saiyan Prince. Pirates, smugglers, bounty hunters, and criminals of every species the galaxy had to offer. They saw his strange armor, his alien features, the white aura that still flickered faintly around his clenched fists. And in that moment, in the dimly lit cantina that reeked of spice and desperation, two things became clear. First, that something completely unprecedented had just walked into their galaxy. And second, that this something was hunting for answers and didn't particularly care who stood in his way. Vegeta's lips curled into a predatory smile. Which one of you is going to tell me where I am? The bartender, a four-armed Ardenian, raised one hand slowly. Tatooine, friend? Outer Rim. If you're looking for... I'm not your friend. Vegeta interrupted, his voice cold as space itself. And I don't care about your Outer Rim. I want to know what star system this is, what galaxy, and how I get off this waste of a planet. You have 10 seconds before I start getting answers a different way. A Trandoshan bounty hunter stood from his table, hissing. You threatening us, off-worlder? You picked the wrong cantina. Vegeta moved. One moment he stood by the entrance. The next, his fist had driven through the Trandoshan's chest plate, the reptilian alien's eyes going wide with shock before Vegeta withdrew his hand and let the body crumple. The entire sequence had taken perhaps a second. No one had even seen him move. The cantina exploded into chaos. Blasters cleared holsters, chairs scraped back, and the air filled with shouted threats in a dozen languages. Vegeta stood in the center of it all, blood dripping from his knuckles, his expression utterly contemptuous. Anyone else? He asked softly. Or are we ready to have a civilized conversation? Outside, in the burning streets of Mos Eisley, Imperial Stormtroopers were already mobilizing in response to reports of a disturbance. They had no idea they were walking toward the beginning of something that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. They had no idea that the warrior prince standing in that cantina had conquered worlds, fought gods, and broken his limits time and again in pursuit of ultimate strength. They had no idea that Vegeta had arrived in the Star Wars galaxy, and he was about to teach them all what true power looked like. The standoff lasted exactly 3 seconds before someone made the fatal mistake of pulling a trigger. A blue bolt of plasma screamed across the cantina toward Vegeta's head. The Saiyan Prince didn't dodge, didn't even blink. He simply raised one hand, and the energy blast stopped centimeters from his palm, suspended in midair by his kai. Every patron froze, staring at the impossible sight of a blaster bolt held motionless by nothing but this stranger's will. Interesting, Vegeta mused, studying the crackling energy. It wasn't kai, wasn't like any attack he'd encountered before. Pure plasma contained in some kind of magnetic field. Primitive, but effective against unarmored targets. He closed his fist, and the bolt compressed into a ball of light before dissipating entirely. Your weapons are weak. Your power is pathetic. But your technology might be useful. He turned his cold gaze on the weak pirate who'd fired. Come here. The pirate's hand trembled on his blaster. Stay back, or I'll... Vegeta's eyes flashed. In the fraction of a second it took the pirate to squeeze the trigger again, the Saiyan Prince had crossed the distance between them, caught the blaster mid-fire, and crushed it into twisted metal. His other hand closed around the Weeke's throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. I'm going to ask my questions one more time, Vegeta said, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying perfectly in the deathly, silent cantina. And you're going to answer them completely. What galaxy is this? The pirate gasped, clawing uselessly at Vegeta's iron grip. The galaxy, just the galaxy. There's only one. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. Impossible. There are countless galaxies. Which one? He means this galaxy doesn't have a name, friend. The bartender called out carefully, all four arms raised in a gesture of peace. We just call it the galaxy. Far as we know, we're alone out here. Millions of systems, but one galaxy. The Saiyan Prince processed this, his tactical mind working through implications. A single galaxy civilization. Either they were ignorant of their neighbors, or this universe truly was structured differently than his own. The latter seemed more likely given the dimensional breach that had brought him here. How many inhabited worlds? Vegeta demanded. Thousands. Maybe millions if you count the Outer Rim settlements. The bartender kept his voice level, clearly trying to avoid becoming the next casualty. You're on Tatooine. Desert world. Nothing special. If you want transport off-world, I can point you toward the spaceport. Transportation. I don't need your primitive ships. Vegeta dropped the gasping Weeke and turned to survey the room. What I need is information about the power structure here. Who rules this galaxy? The Galactic Empire? A human smuggler offered from the corner, apparently deciding cooperation was preferable to dying. Emperor Palpatine controls most of known space. Imperial Navy, Stormtroopers, Star Destroyers. They've got the firepower to glass planets from orbit. Vegeta's interest sharpened. An empire, military strength, planetary destruction capability. He nodded slowly. This emperor, how did he achieve power? Took over from the Republic about 20 years back. Used the Clone Wars to consolidate control, then declared himself emperor. Anyone who opposed him got crushed. The Jedi tried to stop him and... Jedi? Vegeta interrupted. Religious warriors. Used something called the Force. Energy field that binds the galaxy together. They could move objects with their minds, see the future, all kinds of impossible things. The smuggler shrugged. Empire hunted them down after they tried to assassinate the Emperor. Maybe a handful left in the whole galaxy now. Vegeta's expression shifted subtly. An energy field that binds the galaxy. He'd been feeling that constant pressure since arriving, that strange, pervasive force that pushed against his Kai. These Jedi could manipulate it consciously. That meant it wasn't just environmental resistance. It was a power source these primitives had learned to tap. Where do I find one of these Jedi? He asked. The cantina erupted in nervous laughter. You don't, friend. They're extinct. Even if you found one, the Empire would be on you in seconds. They've got Inquisitors and Lord Vader himself hunting down any survivors. Vader. Vegeta tested the name. Another Force user? The Emperor's right hand. They say he was a Jedi once, before he fell to the dark side. Now he's the Empire's executioner. Killed more Jedi than anyone else alive. The smuggler's voice dropped. If you're smart, you'll avoid Imperial attention entirely, They don't negotiate with unknowns. Before Vegeta could respond, the cantina doors burst open. White-armored soldiers poured in, blasters raised, mechanical voices barking orders. Everyone on the ground. Imperial security lockdown. There's been a report of... The lead stormtrooper stopped mid-sentence as he spotted Vegeta standing over the Trandoshan's corpse. The Saiyan Prince's armor still spattered with the bounty hunter's blood. For a moment, neither side moved. Then the sergeant raised his weapon. "You there, on your knees, hands behind your head. You're under arrest for murder and..." Arrest? Vegeta's laugh was cold and sharp. "You actually think you're in a position to make demands?" "We have you surrounded," the sergeant said, trying to sound authoritative despite the tremor in his voice. "There's a platoon outside and air support inbound. Surrender now, or we will use lethal force." Vegeta's response was to extend one finger toward the sergeant. A pinpoint of golden energy gathered at the tip, barely larger than a marble, but crackling with concentrated power. Every instinct in the cantina screamed danger. Pirates dove for cover. The bartender dropped behind his bar. Even the stormtroopers hesitated, their training warring with survival instinct. "Let me show you the difference between us," Vegeta said softly. The energy lance that erupted from his finger was thinner than a lightsaber blade, but infinitely hotter. It punched through the sergeant's armor, through the stormtrooper behind him, through the wall, through the building beyond, and kept going until it carved a perfectly straight hole through 6 more structures before dissipating somewhere in the distance. The sergeant's body fell in 2 pieces. The remaining stormtroopers opened fire. Dozens of blue and red plasma bolts converged on Vegeta's position. The Saiyan Prince didn't bother dodging. He simply stood there as the energy blasts struck his body and bounced harmlessly off his ki aura. The white energy field around him flared with each impact, but none of the shots even reached his armor. "Impossible," one trooper breathed. "No," Vegeta corrected, walking forward through the sustained fire. "Just beyond your comprehension." He moved among them like death incarnate. No wasted motion, no excess force, just clinical, devastating efficiency. A palm strike that sent one stormtrooper flying through the cantina wall, an elbow that crumpled another's chest plate like foil, a casual backhand that separated a third from his helmet and consciousness simultaneously. Within seconds, the entire squad lay broken across the sand-covered floor. Vegeta stepped over their bodies and walked outside into the harsh sunlight. More stormtroopers were setting up positions in the street, and he could hear the whine of repulsor engines as Imperial speeder bikes approached. Above, a patrol craft descended from the cloudless sky, its loudspeakers already blaring warnings. The Saiyan Prince looked up at the incoming forces and felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine curiosity. This galaxy had military strength, planetary-scale weapons, and mysterious energy-manipulating warriors. It had an empire built on conquest and power. And from what he'd heard, it was currently at war with itself. "Perfect," Vegeta murmured, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "Let's see what this galaxy can really do." He raised both hands toward the descending patrol craft, keys gathering in his palms. The energy felt sluggish compared to his home universe, but it still answered his call, still obeyed his will, still burned with enough power to obliterate everything in sight. The patrol craft's sensors went haywire, alarms screaming as they detected the impossible energy buildup. The pilot tried to pull up, tried to activate shields, tried to do anything to escape what was coming. Vegeta fired. The twin beams of golden energy struck the craft dead center and punched straight through its hull. For a moment, the ship hung in the air, its engines sputtering. Then it exploded in a fireball that lit up the Mos Eisley skyline, raining burning debris across 3 city blocks. In the street below, Stormtroopers watched the wreckage fall and realized they were facing something far beyond their training, beyond their weapons, beyond anything the Empire had prepared them for. Some broke ranks and ran. Others held their ground out of discipline or fear of their commanders. A few, the veterans who'd seen action across the galaxy, simply lowered their weapons and waited to die. Vegeta touched down in the center of the street, smoke and ash swirling around him. His white aura pulsed steadily, and his eyes scanned the assembled Imperial forces with contempt. "Is this the best your Empire can offer?" he called out. "Is this the military might that conquered your galaxy?" No one answered. The survivors were too busy trying to process what they'd just witnessed. One being destroying an Imperial patrol craft with nothing but energy projected from his hands. It defied everything they knew about warfare, about power, about what was possible. High above Tatooine, in the cold vacuum of space, an Imperial Star Destroyer hung in geosynchronous orbit. On its bridge, a commander stared at the reports flooding in from the surface with growing horror. A single hostile had destroyed 2 squads and a patrol craft. No ship, no weapons. Just raw, inexplicable power. The commander reached for the communication console with shaking hands. This was beyond his authority. This required someone with experience in the impossible. This required Lord Vader. The transmission reached the Imperial Palace on Coruscant within the hour, carried by priority encryption reserved for planetary emergencies. In the meditation chamber, where Darth Vader had first sensed the disturbance, the Dark Lord of the Sith stood before a holographic display, watching footage from Tatooine with methodical interest. The image quality was poor, captured from a Stormtrooper's helmet cam in the seconds before his death. But it showed enough. A warrior in white and gold armor, moving faster than the camera could track, destroying Imperial forces with casual contempt. And that energy, that golden aura that surrounded him like living fire, that deflected blaster bolts as if they were nothing. "Rewind," Vader commanded, his mechanical breathing the only sound in the chamber. "Magnify Sector 7-3. The hologram zoomed in on Vegeta's face during the moment he'd fired at the patrol craft. The expression was one Vader recognized intimately. The cold focus of someone who had killed before, who would kill again, who viewed violence as simply another tool. But there was something else beneath it. Pride, arrogance, and an absolute certainty in his own superiority. "A warrior," Vader observed. But from where? The Force swirls around him strangely. It touches him, but cannot grasp him, as if he exists adjacent to it. A secondary screen activated, showing the energy readings from the incident. The numbers made no sense. The power output from the warrior's attacks exceeded anything short of a ship-mounted turbo laser. Yet the source appeared to be biological. No energy cell, no power generator, no technology at all, just raw force emanating from within his body. Vader's gloved hands clenched. In his youth, as Anakin Skywalker, he had been called the Chosen One, the most powerful Force user in generations. But power was relative, and the Force had limits. What he saw in this footage suggested something beyond those limits, something that didn't play by the galaxy's rules. "My lord," an officer's voice crackled through the chamber's comm system. "The Emperor requests your presence." Of course he did. Palpatine would have sensed the same disturbance, would have reached the same conclusions. And now he would want his apprentice to investigate, to capture or kill this unknown threat before it could destabilize his carefully constructed order. Vader deactivated the hologram and strode from the chamber, his cape billowing behind him. The palace corridors parted before him. Officers snapping to attention, servants pressing themselves against walls, all of them desperate to avoid drawing the Dark Lord's notice. Fear was the Empire's currency, and Vader was its most valuable asset. In the throne room, Emperor Palpatine sat bathed in shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming with predatory interest. He gestured for Vader to approach, a knowing smile playing at his withered lips. "You have seen the reports from Tatooine," Palpatine said. It wasn't a question. "I have, Master. A single warrior destroyed an Imperial garrison. His power is unprecedented." Unprecedented, yes. The Emperor's fingers drummed on the armrest of his throne. "Tell me, my apprentice, what did you feel when this presence first touched the Force?" Vader paused, choosing his words carefully. "A disturbance. As if something foreign had entered our reality. The Force reacted to his arrival the way an organism reacts to an infection, attempting to isolate and contain it. And yet, it cannot." Palpatine leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "This warrior draws upon something else entirely. Not the Force, not technology, but a third path, an internal power that burns like a star." He smiled wider. "Do you understand what this means? That he is dangerous. That he is valuable." The Emperor rose from his throne, his robes rustling in the chamber's recycled air. "The Jedi are broken. The Sith stand alone. But here, from beyond the edges of our galaxy, comes something new. Something that could be shaped, molded, turned to our purposes." Vader felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in years. Unease. "You wished to recruit him. I wished to test him first." Palpatine's eyes gleamed. "Send your Inquisitors to Tatooine. Let them engage this warrior, measure his capabilities. If he destroys them, we will know he is too dangerous to approach directly. If he merely defeats them, we will know he can be reasoned with." He paused. "And if he joins them, well, then we will know he is weak, and weakness can always be exploited." "As you command, Master." Vader bowed and turned to leave, but Palpatine's voice stopped him. "One more thing, Lord Vader. I sense great pride in this warrior. Pride like yours once." The Emperor's smile turned cruel. "Use that. Pride is always a pathway to the dark side." Back on Tatooine, Vegeta had claimed the ruins of the cantina as his temporary base. The surviving patrons had fled, leaving him alone with scattered bodies and the distant wail of Imperial sirens. He sat on a broken table, arms crossed, eyes closed, attempting to meditate on the strange energy that permeated this galaxy. The Force, they called it, an omnipresent field that connected all living things. He could feel it now, pressing against his Kai like a rival current. Where his energy burned hot and immediate, this force flowed cool and patient. Where his power came from within, this energy came from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "Interesting," he muttered, opening his eyes. "If I could learn to manipulate this force while maintaining my Kai, I'd be twice as powerful." The tactical implications excited him. In his universe, Kai was the ultimate power source, but it required training, discipline, and Saiyan genetics to achieve true mastery. Here, this force seemed accessible to anyone with the right sensitivity. If he could tap into both simultaneously, no one in either universe could challenge him. a sound interrupted his thoughts. The whine of repulsor engines, but different from before. Sleeker, more sophisticated. Vegeta rose and walked to the cantina's shattered entrance, looking up to see 3 black ships descending from the sky. They moved with precision, forming a triangular pattern around his position before landing in the street. The hatches opened, and figures emerged. 5 of them, dressed in black armor that incorporated both technology and what Vegeta recognized as ceremonial design. They moved like predators, each step calculated, each gesture suggesting trained combat efficiency. More importantly, Vegeta could feel the force swirling around them with unusual intensity. The leader stepped forward, a Pau'an with gray skin and black markings that gave his face a skull-like appearance. He ignited a weapon, a blade of pure red energy that hummed with barely contained power. "I am the Grand Inquisitor," the figure announced, his voice cultured and cold. "By order of the Galactic Empire and Lord Vader himself, you are to surrender immediately. Resist, and we are authorized to use lethal force." Vegeta's eyes narrowed, studying the energy blade. It cut through matter using contained plasma, similar to the blasters, but far more refined. And the way the Inquisitor held it suggested extensive combat training. These weren't ordinary soldiers. "Let me guess," Vegeta said, not bothering to hide his contempt. "You're the Force users I've been hearing about, the ones who can move objects with their minds and see the future. We are Inquisitors. We serve the Emperor and hunt the last remnants of the Jedi Order." The Grand Inquisitor circled slowly, his lightsaber held in a ready position. "You possess power we do not understand. The Emperor wishes to know its source. You can cooperate, or you can be vivisected and studied. The choice is yours." Vegeta laughed, a short, sharp bark of genuine amusement. "Vivisected? You actually think you're capable of that?" "I sense no Force presence in you," the Grand Inquisitor continued, ignoring the mockery. "Yet, you project power that rivals the most accomplished Jedi Masters. This is impossible. You are either using technology we cannot detect, or you are something else." "I'm a Saiyan," Vegeta said flatly. "Elite warrior race. I've conquered planets, destroyed armies, and broken my limits more times than you've drawn breath. Your force is interesting, but it's not the only path to power." The other 4 Inquisitors ignited their lightsabers, forming a loose perimeter. Vegeta recognized the tactic, attempting to surround him, limit his options, force him into a defensive position. It might have worked against a normal opponent. The Grand Inquisitor raised his free hand, and Vegeta felt the force gather around him like invisible chains. It attempted to grip him, to hold him in place through telekinetic pressure. The sensation was novel, not physical force, but something that bypassed the body to constrain movement directly. Vegeta's response was to flex his Kai. The white aura erupted around him with enough force to shatter the remaining windows of nearby buildings. The telekinetic grip shattered like glass, and the Grand Inquisitor actually stumbled backward, shock evident even on his alien features. "Impossible," the Inquisitor breathed. "The Force cannot hold him. It's as if he exists in a separate reality overlapping our own." "Your Force is weak," Vegeta said, settling into a combat stance. His muscles coiled, ready to explode into action. "It relies on manipulation and trickery. My power is absolute. Let me demonstrate the difference." He vanished. To the Inquisitors, it appeared he had simply ceased to exist in one location and reappeared in another. In reality, Vegeta had moved faster than their force-enhanced reflexes could track. closing the distance to the nearest Inquisitor in a fraction of a second. His fist struck the Inquisitor's midsection with precisely calculated force, enough to shatter the armor and drive the air from the man's lungs, but not enough to kill instantly. The Inquisitor flew backward, crashed through a wall, and didn't get up. The remaining four attacked as one, their coordination suggesting years of training together. Lightsabers whirled in intricate patterns, each strike designed to flow into the next, to create an impenetrable web of lethal energy. The Grand Inquisitor led the assault, his blade spinning with mechanical precision as he closed the distance. Vegeta caught the lightsaber between two fingers. The red blade sputtered and sparked where it made contact with his Kai-enhanced skin, unable to cut through the energy field that surrounded him. The Grand Inquisitor's eyes widened in disbelief, and in that moment of hesitation, Vegeta struck. Not with his fists, but with a burst of Kai from his free hand at point-blank range. The explosion sent the Grand Inquisitor tumbling across the street, his armor smoking, his lightsaber spinning away into the sand. The other three Inquisitors hesitated, their confidence visibly shaken. "Is that all?" Vegeta asked, genuine disappointment in his voice. "The Emperor sent his best warriors, and this is what I get? Your force can't hold me. Your weapons can't cut me. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" One Inquisitor, a Mirialan woman with determination etched into her features, thrust both hands forward. The force gathered in a devastating telekinetic wave that had leveled buildings during the Jedi Purge. It struck Vegeta dead on and washed around him like water around a stone. "My turn," Vegeta said. He raised one hand, fingers spread wide, and fired 5 individual Kai blasts in rapid succession. Each one no larger than a marble, each one containing enough power to punch through durasteel. The Inquisitors scattered, their force precognition giving them just enough warning to avoid instant death. But the blasts tracked them with terrifying accuracy. One struck an Inquisitor's shoulder, spinning him around. Another clipped a leg, sending a Twi'lek crashing to the ground. The third detonated against a hastily erected force barrier, and the Inquisitor behind it collapsed from the effort of deflecting so much power. Within 30 seconds, all 5 Inquisitors lay defeated in the street. Not dead, Vegeta had held back, curious about these force users and their potential value, but thoroughly broken. The Grand Inquisitor struggled to his knees, blood running down his face, his earlier composure shattered. "Report to your Vader," Vegeta commanded, walking toward the defeated leader. "Tell him that if he wants to meet me, he can come himself. Tell him I'm not interested in serving your Emperor, but I am interested in testing the limits of this force." He leaned down, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And tell him that if he sends weaklings like you again, I'll stop pulling my punches." The Grand Inquisitor managed a nod, and Vegeta turned away, already dismissing them from his thoughts. These Inquisitors had been a disappointment, skilled by this galaxy's standards, but nothing compared to the warriors he'd faced in his own universe. As the Inquisitors limped back to their ships, Vegeta looked up at the twin suns and smiled. This galaxy was weaker than his own, but it had potential. Technology that could destroy planets, warriors who wielded mysterious energy, an empire built on conquest and power. And somewhere out there, a Dark Lord called Vader, who might actually provide a decent challenge. "Come find me," Vegeta murmured to the empty sky. "Let's see if you're worth my time." On Coruscant, Darth Vader watched the holographic feed from the Inquisitor's ships with cold fury. 5 of his best hunters, defeated in less than a minute by a single warrior. The Grand Inquisitor's message was clear. This was beyond the Inquisitorius. This required the Dark Lord himself. Vader turned to the navigation officer. "Prepare my ship. Set course for Tatooine." It was time to meet this Saiyan Prince face to face. Word of the Inquisitor's defeat spread through the galactic underworld faster than light through hyperspace. In the criminal dens of Mos Eisley, in the spice warehouses and smugglers' hideouts, whispers circulated about the warrior who had humiliated the Empire's Jedi hunters without breaking a sweat. Some dismissed it as exaggeration. Others saw opportunity. In a dimly lit booth at the back of a replacement cantina, the original still being scraped off the walls, a holographic conference materialized. 3 figures appeared in flickering blue light. Jabba the Hutt, his massive bulk barely contained by the projection. A sleek female Feline, representing the Black Sun Syndicate, and a masked figure whose identity remained carefully obscured. They were discussing a bounty. 5 million credits, Jabba's translator droid announced in monotone. For the warrior alive, 10 million for proof of death. The Empire wants him too, the Feline noted, her voice silky smooth. We'd be competing with Imperial resources. That drives up risk exponentially. Risk creates profit, the masked figure countered. Besides, the Empire wants him captured for study. We have no such restrictions. Dead is simpler. In the cantina's main room, unaware he'd become the most valuable target in the Outer Rim, Vegeta sat at a table covered with datapads he'd commandeered from fleeing patrons. He was teaching himself this galaxy's technology through brute force memorization and intuitive leaps. The basic language had taken him an hour to decode, similar enough to languages he'd encountered conquering planets for Frieza. The technical specifications were more complex, but he was beginning to understand the fundamentals. Hyperspace travel. Fascinating. They'd discovered how to tunnel through higher dimensional space without needing raw speed or energy manipulation. It was elegant, efficient, and explained how such a primitive civilization had spread across an entire galaxy. Give them another 1,000 years and proper genetic engineering, and they might actually produce warriors worth fighting. "Excuse me, friend." Vegeta didn't look up from the datapad. "If you value your life, walk away." "I'm afraid I can't do that." The voice was cultured, professional, with an accent Vegeta was beginning to associate with core world education. "My name is Tycho Varn. I represent certain parties who are very interested in making your acquaintance." Now Vegeta looked up. The speaker was human, middle-aged, wearing expensive clothes that managed to look casual despite costing more than most speeders. His hands were visible and empty, and his body language suggested someone accustomed to negotiating with dangerous people. "Interested parties," Vegeta repeated flatly. "Criminal organizations, I assume. You heard about the Inquisitors and decided to try recruiting me yourselves." Tycho's smile didn't waver. "Direct. I appreciate that. Yes, several syndicates are interested in retaining your services. The pay would be substantial. Not interested. You haven't heard the offer?" "I don't need to." Vegeta set down the datapad and fixed Tycho with a stare that had made hardened warriors reconsider their life choices. "I'm not a mercenary. I don't work for criminals. And I definitely don't take orders from weaklings who hide behind hired muscle." "Understandable." Tycho pulled out a chair and sat uninvited, his confidence either genuine or superbly faked. "Let me propose something different then. Information exchange. You're clearly new to our galaxy, still learning its systems and power structures. We can provide data, resources, technology, All the things a warrior needs to operate effectively in unfamiliar territory. In exchange for what? A favor, unspecified, to be called in at our discretion. Tycho spread his hands. Think of it as insurance. We help you now, and someday when we need something only someone of your unique capabilities can provide, you assist us. No slavery, no long-term contracts, just a one-time arrangement between professionals. Vegeta considered this. The offer had merit. He needed to understand this galaxy's technology, its political landscape, its power structures. These criminals had connections throughout the underworld, access to information the Empire might suppress, and a single favor was manageable. He could always refuse if they asked for something that offended his pride. "What kind of favor are we discussing?" he asked. "Could be anything. Rescue operation, intimidation, perhaps eliminating a particularly troublesome competitor." Tycho leaned back, reading Vegeta's expression with practiced ease. "Nothing that would bore someone of your talents. We're not fools. We wouldn't waste your capabilities on simple muscle work." Before Vegeta could respond, the cantina doors exploded inward. Armored figures poured through the entrance, not stormtroopers this time, but bounty hunters. Vegeta recognized species from the data pads. A massive Wookiee wielding a bowcaster, a Mandalorian in green and brown armor, several Trandoshans with blaster rifles, and leading them all, a figure in battered armor that had seen 100 battles. "Vegeta!" the lead bounty hunter called out, his voice electronically modulated. "By authority of the Bounty Hunters Guild and with full Imperial sanction, I'm placing you under arrest. Surrender now, and you'll be treated fairly." Vegeta slowly stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Around the cantina, patrons dove for cover. They'd learned their lesson from the last incident. Tycho remained seated, his expression suggesting he'd expected this development. "Let me guess," Vegeta said, his voice dangerously calm. "Someone put a bounty on me." 10 million credits, the Mandalorian confirmed, his weapon, some kind of wrist-mounted rocket, tracking Vegeta's movement. "Enough to retire on. Dead or alive, though alive pays better. Your choice." The Wookiee roared something in his native language, and Vegeta felt the pressure of multiple targeting lasers painting his chest and head. At least 20 weapons trained on him from various angles, including several he recognized from the data pads as heavy anti-vehicle cannons. These bounty hunters had done their research, brought overwhelming firepower, and chosen their moment when he was sitting down, potentially vulnerable. They'd planned well. It wouldn't save them. 10 million, Vegeta mused. "Is that a lot in your economy?" "Enough to buy a small moon," Tycho supplied helpfully. "You should feel honored. That's one of the highest bounties ever posted in the Outer Rim." "Honored?" Vegeta's laugh was cold. "I'm being hunted by glorified mercenaries for pocket change. This galaxy's values are severely distorted." The Mandalorian's finger tightened on his trigger. "Last chance. Stand down or..." Vegeta's ki aura exploded outward with enough force to shatter tables, blow out windows, and send every loose object in the cantina flying. The bounty hunters stumbled, their targeting solutions disrupted by the sudden pressure wave. And in that moment of confusion, Vegeta struck. He moved among them like lightning, each strike precise and devastating. The Trandoshans went down first, their tough scales no match for fists moving faster than their nerves could register pain. The Wookiee managed to fire his bowcaster, the explosive bolt detonating harmlessly against Vegeta's aura before a palm strike sent the massive warrior crashing through a wall. The Mandalorian proved more resilient, His armor absorbed the first hit, jetpack igniting to give him distance as he fired everything. Wrist rockets, forearm flamethrower, a particle beam from his gauntlet. Vegeta stood in the center of the firestorm, his white aura deflecting attacks that could have destroyed a light vehicle. Impressive armor, Vegeta acknowledged, watching the Mandalorian circle above him. But armor is only as strong as the warrior inside it. He raised one hand and fired a Kai blast. Not enough to kill, but sufficient to disable. The golden beam struck the Mandalorian's jetpack dead center, and the propulsion system detonated in a shower of sparks. The bounty hunter crashed to the floor, his armor smoking, his weapons systems offline. Vegeta walked over and placed one boot on the Mandalorian's chest, pinning him effortlessly. Tell whoever hired you that I'm not interested in being hunted. Tell them that the next group won't survive long enough to retreat. And tell them, he leaned down, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, that if they want me dead, they should send someone who can actually threaten me. He released the pressure and turned away, leaving the Mandalorian gasping for breath. Around the cantina, groaning bounty hunters struggled to rise or simply lay still. Their profitable ambush turned into a humiliating defeat. Tycho, who had watched the entire encounter without moving from his seat, began a slow clap. Magnificent. You neutralized an entire hunting party in under 30 seconds. My employers will be very pleased to have you as an associate. I haven't agreed to anything, Vegeta said, but his tone suggested he was reconsidering. These bounty hunters would keep coming, drawn by profit and the challenge of hunting dangerous prey. The criminal syndicates could make those problems disappear, or at least provide intelligence on incoming threats. Of course not, Tycho agreed smoothly. Take your time, consider your options, but know that my offer stands: information, resources, and protection from tedious interruptions like this in exchange for a single favor when the time comes. He stood and placed a small device on the table. Communication beacon. When you're ready to talk, activate it. Someone will find you within the hour. He walked calmly through the wreckage and disappeared into the Tatooine streets, leaving Vegeta alone with unconscious bounty hunters and a decision to make. The Saiyan Prince picked up the communication beacon, studying its simple design. In his universe, allying with criminals would have been beneath his royal station. But this wasn't his universe. Here, he had no army, no empire, no resources beyond his own power. Pride was valuable, but pragmatism had its place. He pocketed the device and returned to his datapads. But his mind was working through implications. The Empire wanted him captured. The criminal underworld wanted to recruit or kill him. And somewhere in this vast galaxy, there was a Dark Lord called Vader, who commanded enough respect to make trained Force users follow his orders. Interesting, Vegeta murmured. This galaxy has more layers than I thought. Outside, the twin suns continued their relentless journey across the sky. In orbit, more Imperial ships were arriving, their commanders demanding updates on the alien warrior who had humiliated their forces. And in hyperspace, traveling at speeds that bent reality itself, Darth Vader's personal shuttle raced toward Tatooine with singular purpose. The Dark Lord had watched the holo-recordings. He had studied the energy readings. He had felt the disturbance in the Force grow stronger with each passing hour. And now, he would meet this Saiyan Prince face to face, would test his power against someone who didn't answer to the Force's ancient laws. Vader stood in his meditation chamber aboard the shuttle, mechanical breathing steady and rhythmic. Around him, the Force swirled with anticipation. as if the galaxy itself understood that something unprecedented was about to occur. Two warriors from different realities, each supreme in their own way, each convinced of their superiority. "We shall see," Vader said to the empty chamber, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Who is truly the stronger?" The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace, Tatooine's desert world filling the viewport. Somewhere on the surface, Vegeta felt a presence approaching, powerful, dark, and wrapped in the Force like armor. His lips curved into a smile. Finally, someone who might be worth fighting. The Executor-class Star Destroyer emerged from hyperspace with the kind of presence that made entire planets hold their breath. At over 19 kilometers long, it dwarfed every ship in the Tatooine system, its wedge-shaped hull blotting out stars as it settled into high orbit. Imperial TIE fighters launched in perfect formation, establishing a perimeter that would make escape impossible for anything short of a capital ship. On the bridge, officers worked in terrified silence. They had learned long ago that Lord Vader tolerated no failure, no excuses, no delays. The Dark Lord stood at the viewport, his imposing silhouette framed against the desert planet below, his breathing the only sound that penetrated the bridge's professional quiet. "Prepare my shuttle," Vader commanded. "Inform the garrison to establish a cordon around Mos Eisley. No one enters or leaves the city until I have completed my business there." "Yes, my lord," the captain responded immediately. "Should we deploy additional ground forces? The reports indicate." "No." Vader's tone brooked no argument. This matter requires a direct approach. Overwhelming force would be counterproductive. He turned from the viewport, his mask fixing on the captain with mechanical precision. "Clear the landing zone. I will handle this personally." The Lambda-class shuttle descended through Tatooine's atmosphere like a black dagger, flanked by a squadron of TIE fighters that peeled off as it entered the city's airspace. Stormtroopers had already established checkpoints throughout Mos Eisley, evacuating civilians and setting up a defensive perimeter that looked more like preparation for warfare than law enforcement. Vegeta sensed the approaching presence before the shuttle touched down. He stood on the roof of what had once been a spice warehouse, arms crossed, eyes scanning the sky. The Force signature was impossible to miss now. A dense concentration of dark energy that felt fundamentally different from the Inquisitors. Where they had wielded the Force with technique and training, this presence commanded it absolutely, bending it to his will through sheer dominance. "About time," Vegeta muttered. The shuttle landed in the cleared plaza, 200 meters from his position. The boarding ramp descended with hydraulic precision, and a figure emerged that matched the descriptions Vegeta had heard whispered throughout the cantinas. Black armor that seemed to absorb light, a flowing cape that moved despite the still air, and a helmet that concealed whatever remained of the man beneath. Darth Vader walked forward with measured steps, his mechanical breathing amplified by external speakers until it filled the plaza like the pulse of some great machine. Behind him, the shuttle's ramp closed, and the ship lifted off, leaving the Dark Lord alone in the center of the square. Vegeta dropped from the roof, landing in a crouch that cracked the duracrete beneath his boots. He rose slowly, studying his opponent with tactical precision. The armor was sophisticated, but vulnerable at the joints. The cape was a liability in close combat. But that presence, that overwhelming concentration of Force energy, suggested capabilities beyond mere physical prowess. "You must be Vader," Vegeta said, his voice carrying across the empty plaza. "And you are the one who has caused such disruption to Imperial operations." Vader's voice was deep, mechanical, devoid of human warmth. You possess power outside the Force. This interests the Emperor. It interests me. I'm not interested in serving your Emperor. Vegeta settled into a relaxed stance, but his muscles remained coiled, ready to explode into action. I'm not interested in joining your empire, your rebellion, or any other faction in this galaxy. I go where I please, do what I please, and answer to no one. Arrogance, Vader observed. You believe your power places you above the natural order. This is a perspective I understand intimately. He raised one hand, and Vegeta felt the Force gather around him like invisible chains. But understanding does not mean tolerance. The telekinetic grip closed around Vegeta with crushing force. Not the tentative pressure the Inquisitors had used, but overwhelming power meant to immobilize completely. Ordinary beings would have been compressed into pulp. Enhanced warriors would have been rendered helpless. Vegeta's ki flared, and the Force grip shattered like glass. Your tricks won't work on me, the Saiyan Prince said, white aura crackling around his body. I've fought mind readers, reality benders, and gods. Your force is impressive, but it's not absolute. For the first time in years, Vader felt something he'd almost forgotten: surprise. The Force was reality itself made manifest, the fundamental energy that bound the galaxy. Nothing existed outside its influence. Yet here stood a warrior who could simply reject its grasp through sheer force of will and whatever strange energy surrounded him. Fascinating, Vader said. You are not immune to the Force. I can sense it touching you, attempting to flow through you. But you possess a separate energy that creates interference, prevents total control. His hand remained raised, now curling into a fist. Let us test the limits of that interference. The Force lashed out, not as a grip, but as a projectile wave of pure telekinetic power. The invisible strike would have pulverized a building, crushed a starship's hull. Vegeta crossed his arms and let it hit him. The impact cratered the ground beneath his feet, sent dust and debris exploding outward in a perfect circle. But Vegeta himself didn't move, his Kai aura absorbing and dispersing the Force attack. When the dust cleared, he stood exactly where he'd been, not even breathing hard. My turn, Vegeta said. He vanished and reappeared directly in front of Vader, his speed exceeding anything the Dark Lord had encountered. His fist drove toward Vader's chest plate with enough force to punch through a blast door. At the last instant, the Force surged, and Vader's lightsaber ignited, the crimson blade intercepting Vegeta's fist in a shower of sparks. Both warriors paused, locked in position. Vegeta's Kai-enhanced knuckles pressed against the lightsaber blade, the plasma unable to cut through his energy field. Vader held the weapon steady, his mechanical strength augmented by the Force to match a blow that should have been unstoppable. You're strong, Vegeta admitted, genuine respect entering his voice. Stronger than those Inquisitors. Stronger than anyone I've met in this galaxy so far. And you are unlike any opponent I have faced. Vader's blade hummed as he adjusted his stance. But strength alone does not determine victory. Technique, strategy, understanding of combat, these separate warriors from brawlers. Vader struck with Form 5 precision. Powerful, aggressive strikes that leveraged mechanical strength and force enhancement. Each blow came from an unexpected angle. Each follow-up flowed seamlessly from the last. The lightsaber carved arcs of red light through the air, seeking vulnerabilities in Vegeta's defense. Vegeta responded with Saiyan combat instinct, raw speed and power refined through hundreds of battles against opponents who could destroy planets. He didn't dodge the lightsaber so much as intercept it. His ki-enhanced strikes meeting the blade at precisely calculated angles that disrupted Vader's form. When the Dark Lord thrust forward, Vegeta caught the blade between his palms and twisted, forcing Vader to disengage or lose his weapon. They separated, circling each other in the ruined plaza. Stormtroopers watched from behind barriers, their training warring with survival instinct. Some raised weapons, then lowered them, recognizing the futility. Others simply stared, witnessing something unprecedented. Lord Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, facing an opponent who matched him blow for blow. "You rely too much on that energy sword," Vegeta observed. "It's a crutch. What happens when you face someone it can't cut?" "The lightsaber is a tool, not a limitation." Vader deactivated the blade and extended both hands. "I am Sith. I command the dark side of the Force itself." The plaza erupted in violent energy. Vader unleashed Force lightning from both hands, twin streams of crackling blue-white energy that had killed Jedi Masters and reduced starship control systems to slag. The lightning converged on Vegeta, wrapping around him in a cage of pure, destructive power. Vegeta gritted his teeth as the electricity coursed through his body. It was different from Kai-based attacks, bypassed his energy field to attack his nervous system directly. Pain receptors fired, muscles spasmed, and for 3 full seconds, the Saiyan Prince understood why the galaxy feared Vader's power. Then his aura exploded outward with redoubled intensity. The Force lightning scattered, repelled by the surge of Kai that surrounded Vegeta like a shield. His armor was scorched, smoke rising from the damaged plates, but his eyes burned with something Vader recognized intimately. Fury channeled into focus. "Not bad," Vegeta admitted, rolling his shoulders. "That actually hurt. You're the first person in this galaxy to manage that." His smile was predatory. "Now let me show you what real power looks like." Golden energy gathered in his palms, compressed and refined into spheres of devastating potential. Vegeta had learned from his fight with the Inquisitors. This galaxy's technology and energy manipulation was vulnerable to concentrated ki attacks. He'd adjusted his output, increased the density, made each blast more efficient despite the Force's interference. He fired both hands simultaneously, and the twin beams screamed across the plaza at near light speed. Vader raised a Force barrier, the invisible shield manifesting as a shimmer in the air. The ki blasts struck dead center and detonated with enough force to level city blocks. The explosion consumed half the plaza, sent a mushroom cloud rising into Tatooine's arid sky, and registered on seismic sensors across 3 continents. When the smoke cleared, Vader stood at the epicenter, his barrier still holding but visibly strained. Cracks of light showed where the Force construct struggled to maintain cohesion. The Dark Lord's breathing had increased in tempo, not from exhaustion, but from the effort required to deflect such overwhelming power. "Incredible," Vader said, and there was genuine admiration beneath the mechanical monotone. "Your energy attacks surpassed turbo laser yields. With proper training, proper focus, you could challenge the Emperor himself." "I don't need training," Vegeta replied, though internally he was recalculating. Vader's defensive capabilities exceeded his initial estimates. The Force barriers could absorb significant punishment, and the Dark Lord's combat experience was evident in every movement, every tactical decision. "But you're right about one thing. I could challenge your Emperor. I could challenge anyone in this galaxy." "Arrogance," Vader repeated, "but perhaps earned." He ignited his lightsaber once more, the crimson blade casting red light across his black armor. You are powerful, Saiyan. More powerful than most beings I have encountered. But power without purpose is simply destruction. What do you want from our galaxy? Vegeta considered the question. What did he want? In his own universe, his goals had been clear. Surpass Kakarot, protect his family, achieve ultimate strength. Here, those goals were impossible. He was alone, separated from everything he'd known, trapped in a galaxy that operated by different rules. I want to understand this force, he said finally. I want to test myself against the strongest warriors you have, and I want to find a way home. He met Vader's masked gaze directly. But until then, I won't be controlled, recruited, or caged. Not by you, not by your Emperor, not by anyone. Then, we are at an impasse. Vader lowered his lightsaber slightly, not deactivating it, but signaling a momentary truce. The Emperor will not tolerate an unknown power operating freely in his galaxy. I cannot allow you to continue disrupting Imperial operations. Yet, you have proven strong enough that attempting to eliminate you would be costly. So, what are you proposing? Vegeta asked, suspicious but curious. A test. Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence between them. Prove your worth through combat, not against me. Our fight would destroy this city and accomplish nothing. But against threats that even the Empire struggles to contain. Demonstrate that your power can serve a purpose beyond simple destruction. You want me to work for you. I want you to demonstrate you are more than a mindless weapon. Vader's tone carried a weight that suggested personal experience. Power for its own sake is hollow. I learned this lesson long ago, though it cost me everything. He paused. There is a separatist remnant in the Outer Rim. Battle droids, automated warships. A threat that continues to destabilize Imperial territory. Destroy them. Prove you can channel your strength toward strategic objectives. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? Then we continue this fight until one of us falls. The city dies. Thousands of civilians perish. And regardless of who wins, you gain nothing. No answers about the Force, no path home, no worthy opponents to test yourself against. Vader's mask tilted slightly. Or you accept my challenge, demonstrate your capabilities, and earn the respect that opens doors throughout the galaxy. The Saiyan Prince hated being manipulated, but he also recognized a tactical opportunity when he saw one. Fighting Vader to conclusion would be satisfying, but ultimately pointless. The Separatist remnant represented a chance to test his abilities against this galaxy's military technology, to see what their automated warships could accomplish, to demonstrate his superiority in terms even the Empire would respect. And perhaps, if he impressed them sufficiently, they would provide access to the resources he needed to understand the Force and find a way home. Fine, Vegeta said. I'll destroy your Separatist remnant. But not because you ordered me to. Because it interests me. And when I'm done, you'll give me everything you know about the Force and dimensional travel. Agreed. Vader deactivated his lightsaber, the crimson blade vanishing with a snap hiss. My shuttle will provide coordinates. The Separatist base is located in the Siswena sector. They possess a small fleet and significant ground forces. The Empire has attempted 3 invasions. All failed. Then they're weak, Vegeta said dismissively. I'll be back in a day. He lifted into the air without waiting for response, his ki aura propelling him skyward. Vader watched him rise toward orbit, felt the strange energy signature fade as the Saiyan Prince departed Tatooine's atmosphere. Around the plaza, Stormtroopers began emerging from cover, stunned by what they'd witnessed. Lord Vader and an unknown warrior fighting to a standstill. The Dark Lord stood alone in the ruined square, his thoughts hidden behind the mask. This Vegeta was dangerous, unpredictable, and driven by pride that rivaled anything Vader had possessed before his fall. But he was also pragmatic beneath the arrogance, capable of recognizing opportunity when properly motivated. And most importantly, he possessed power that existed outside the Emperor's control. Power that, with proper manipulation, might eventually challenge Palpatine's absolute dominion. Interesting, Vader murmured, turning back toward his shuttle. Very interesting indeed. In orbit, Vegeta tore through space, using Kai to create a protective field against the vacuum. The coordinates Vader had provided appeared on his newly acquired datapad, a military-grade Imperial device he'd appropriated during the fight. The Seswena sector was several star systems away, too far to travel at his current speed without exhausting himself. He'd need a ship. Or perhaps something more interesting. He'd noticed hyperdrive technology in the datapads, studied the principles. If he could manipulate his Kai to create a similar dimensional tunnel. Vegeta smiled as he considered the possibilities. This galaxy was starting to get interesting. The Seswena sector hung on the edge of Imperial space like a forgotten wound. Once a thriving industrial region during the Clone Wars, it had been transformed into a fortress by separatist forces desperate to survive the Republic's final push. When the war ended and the Empire rose, these automated factories and their droid armies simply continued. No organic leadership remained to order a shutdown, so the machines kept building, kept fighting, kept following their last programmed directive: resist the Republic. That the Republic no longer existed was irrelevant to machine logic. Vegeta arrived in the sector after commandeering an Imperial patrol craft. He'd simply flown up to it, ripped open the airlock, and informed the crew they could either give him the ship or die. They'd chosen wisely. Now he sat in the pilot's chair, studying tactical displays that showed a small fleet of separatist vessels orbiting an industrial world designated only as Seswena 9. 3 Munificent-class frigates, 2 Recusant-class destroyers, and a Providence-class carrier. The databanks identified them as Clone Wars-era capital ships, heavily armed and designed for automated operation. Against a single fighter, they'd be overwhelming. Against an Imperial battle group, they'd lasted long enough to destroy 2 Star Destroyers before retreating. Against Vegeta, they were target practice. Let's see what this galaxy's military technology can actually do, he muttered, pushing the throttle forward. The patrol craft screamed toward the Separatist fleet at maximum acceleration. Immediately, sensors lit up with targeting locks. The droid ships had detected the Imperial signature and responded with typical machine efficiency, launching hundreds of Vulture droids and opening fire with turbo-laser batteries that could reduce asteroids to vapor. Vegeta watched the targeting display fill with red hostile markers and smiled. This was what he'd been craving since arriving in this galaxy. Not politicians, not bounty hunters, not even Force users testing his patience. Just straightforward combat against overwhelming odds. The first turbo-laser salvo arrived in walls of emerald energy. Each bolt carried enough power to penetrate capital ship armor. Dozens converged on the patrol craft from multiple angles, a killing field that no pilot could navigate. Vegeta simply flew through it. His Kai aura extended around the ship, creating a protective barrier that deflected the turbo-laser fire like rain against stone. The Imperial craft shuddered with each impact, but held together, its hull protected by energy that the Separatist targeting computers couldn't even detect. let alone compensate for. "Predictable," Vegeta observed, banking hard toward the nearest frigate. "Your machines think in straight lines." The vulture droids swarmed to intercept, sleek, predatory fighters that could outmaneuver any organic pilot. They fired in coordinated patterns, their droid brains calculating angles and vectors with mechanical precision. Against a normal opponent, the tactic would have been lethal. Vegeta released his conscious control of the ship and let his combat instincts take over. The patrol craft twisted through impossible angles, pulling G-forces that would have liquefied a normal pilot. He felt the hull groan under the stress, but reinforced it with Kai, literally holding the ship together through energy manipulation, while evading hundreds of incoming shots. A vulture droid dove at him from above, its laser cannons tracking with perfect accuracy. Vegeta waited until the last possible moment, then fired the patrol craft's weapons. Not at the droid, but at the space directly in front of it. The laser fire heated the vacuum, created a thermal pocket that disrupted the droid's sensors for a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. Vegeta yanked the control stick, and his ship spun end over end, passing within meters of the confused droid. As they crossed paths, he extended his hand through the open viewport. Open because he'd torn off the transparent steel to better sense his surroundings, and fired a ki blast. The golden energy sphere struck the vulture droid's central processor and detonated. The fighter exploded in a cascade of sparks and debris, its wingmates immediately adjusting their formation to compensate. "Too slow," Vegeta said, already targeting the next one. He tore through the droid swarm like a blade through silk, each movement precise and devastating. Kai blasts punctuated conventional weapons fire, creating a hybrid fighting style the Separatist computers couldn't predict. They adapted quickly, droid brains networking to share tactical data, adjusting their assault patterns to account for his impossible maneuvers. It didn't matter. Vegeta had fought opponents who could read minds, who could see the future, who could manipulate reality itself. Machines that thought in nanoseconds were fast. He was faster. Within 3 minutes, 72 vulture droids had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The remaining fighters broke off, retreating toward their carrier ships in a tactical withdrawal that suggested the central command computer had recognized its fighter screen was ineffective. "Running already?" Vegeta muttered, accelerating toward the Providence-class carrier. "I haven't even started." The massive ship rotated to bring its primary weapons to bear. Point defense turbo lasers that could create a defensive sphere of fire around the vessel, ion cannons designed to disable enemy capital ships, and missile tubes loaded with proton torpedoes. The droid brain commanding the vessel calculated probabilities, assessed threat levels, and made the logical conclusion that this single patrol craft somehow represented an existential danger. It fired everything. The barrage was apocalyptic. Enough firepower to level a city, concentrated on a single small target. The space around Vegeta's ship became a maze of lethal energy, each path blocked by overlapping fields of fire. Even with his Kai enhancement, even with his Saiyan reflexes, there was no clear route through. So Vegeta abandoned the ship entirely. He kicked off from the pilot's chair, his ki aura expanding into a full-body shield as he accelerated through the vacuum. The patrol craft exploded behind him, consumed by the turbolaser barrage he'd just vacated. The droid brain registered the destruction, began calculating a victory report, then detected the impossible. The life sign was still approaching, now moving even faster without the ship's limitations. Vegeta crossed the remaining distance in seconds, his trajectory seemingly suicidal as he flew directly toward the carrier's hull. Point defense turrets tracked him, fired in desperation, their bolts splashing harmlessly against his Kai field. He could feel the force now, stronger here in the industrial sector. Whatever had happened during the Clone Wars had left psychic scars in this region, echoes of millions of deaths that resonated through the omnipresent energy. He landed on the carrier's hull with enough force to dent the durasteel plating. Through his boots, he felt the vibrations of the ship's systems, sensed the power flowing through its conduits, identified the key structural points where maximum damage could be inflicted. "This is the fleet that destroyed 2 Star Destroyers?" Vegeta asked the uncaring void. Pathetic. He raised both hands and fired directly down. The concentrated Kai beams punched through the carrier's armor like it was paper, penetrated 3 decks, severed primary power conduits, and detonated the main reactor's containment field. The explosion began in the ship's core and radiated outward, consuming deck after deck in a chain reaction of catastrophic failure. Vegeta launched himself away as the carrier died, tumbling through space toward the nearest Recusant-class destroyer. Behind him, the Providence-class vessel broke apart, its hull fragmenting as secondary explosions rippled through every system. Hundreds of battle droids were vented into space, their mechanical bodies freezing instantly in the absolute cold. The remaining Separatist ships responded with admirable efficiency. The Recusants moved to flank him while the Munificents established overlapping fire zones. They'd recognized the threat pattern now, understood that conventional tactics were useless. Their new strategy was simple: create so much firepower that even this impossible enemy couldn't evade it all. Vegeta felt his energy reserves dip noticeably. The Force's interference was still present, still making every Kai technique slightly less efficient than it should be. In his own universe, he could have destroyed these ships without breaking a sweat. Here, he had to be more careful, more tactical, which made it interesting. He accelerated toward the nearest Recusant, weaving through turbo laser fire that filled the void with green death. The destroyer's droid brain attempted to predict his movement, firing where it calculated he would be rather than where he was. It was a sound strategy that had worked against Republic fighters countless times. But Vegeta wasn't a Republic fighter. He was a Saiyan warrior who'd learned to fight under gravity hundreds of times Earth's normal, who'd trained in conditions that would kill lesser beings, who'd broken his limits so many times that impossible had become merely difficult. He changed direction in mid-flight, violating every law of momentum the droid brain knew. Physics suggested he should continue on his trajectory. Kai manipulation said he could go wherever he pleased. The targeting solution collapsed, recalibrated, collapsed again as Vegeta's path became genuinely unpredictable. He slammed into the Recusant's bridge section at full speed. The impact cratered the armored hull, his body punching through durasteel and plasteel like a missile. Emergency bulkheads tried to seal, atmospheric pressure vented into space, and the droid crew worked frantically to maintain control. Vegeta stood in the center of the devastated bridge, surrounded by sparking consoles and shattered tactical droids. "Which one of you is in charge?" he asked, knowing the question was meaningless. These were machines, following programming without consciousness or fear. The tactical droids turned to face him, their photoreceptors analyzing and cataloging the intruder. One raised a blaster rifle, its mechanical brain deciding that direct combat was the only remaining option. Vegeta was already moving. He tore through the bridge crew like a force of nature, each strike calculated to maximize structural damage. His fist punched through the central computer core, his ki surging into the ship's electronic nervous system. The Recusant shuddered, its systems cascading into failure as vital data nodes went offline. He exited through the hull, ripping a new hole in the destroyer's side as he launched back into space. Behind him, the recusant began a slow tumble, its engines dead, its weapons silent. The remaining 4 ships, 1 recusant and 3 munificents, attempted to retreat. Their hyperdrives spun up, preparing to jump to safety and regroup. It was the tactically sound decision, preserving assets to fight another day. Vegeta wouldn't allow it. He extended both hands and gathered his Kai into the most concentrated blast he'd generated since arriving in this galaxy. The force pushed back against his energy, trying to contain it, but he forced the power through sheer will. Golden light built between his palms, growing brighter until it outshone the system's distant star. "Gallic gun!" he roared, knowing no one could hear in the vacuum, but unable to suppress the warrior's battle cry. The purple-gold beam screamed across space at relativistic speeds. It struck the fleeing recusant dead center, punched completely through the ship's length, and continued toward the munificence beyond. The destroyer exploded, torn apart by energy that exceeded its structural limits by orders of magnitude. The 3 munificents scattered, attempting to present harder targets. 2 managed to enter hyperspace, their forms compressing and vanishing in flashes of pseudo-motion. The 3rd wasn't fast enough. Vegeta's beam clipped its drive section, and the hyperdrive detonated, taking half the ship with it. Within 6 minutes of entering the Seswena sector, Vegeta had destroyed or disabled 5 capital ships and hundreds of fighter craft. The separatist presence that had held off the Empire for years had been reduced to 2 fleeing vessels and scattered debris. Vegeta floated in the void, catching his breath. His energy reserves were at perhaps 70%. Manageable, but lower than he preferred. The force interference was more significant than he'd initially calculated. He'd need to adapt, learn to work with or around this pervasive energy rather than constantly fighting against it. But the victory was satisfying. These ships had posed a genuine challenge, forced him to think tactically rather than relying solely on overwhelming power. And the data he'd gathered about this galaxy's military capabilities would be invaluable going forward. A new presence touched his awareness. Not through Kai sensing, which was useless in this universe, but through his growing sensitivity to the Force. Something was approaching from the direction of Imperial space. Multiple ships moving in formation, their signatures marked by the cold efficiency he'd learned to associate with the Empire. Vegeta smiled. Vader had apparently sent observers to verify his success. Perfect. Let them see what a Saiyan warrior could accomplish. Let them report back to their Emperor that conventional military force meant nothing to someone who existed beyond their understanding of power. The Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 3 Star Destroyers and a full fighter complement. Their commanders had expected to find a battlefield, perhaps even to participate in final cleanup operations. Instead, they found Vegeta floating amid the wreckage of ships that had defeated Imperial forces 3 times, his arms crossed, his expression bored. A communication request pinged on his appropriated datapad. He accepted it, and a hologram materialized, an Imperial admiral, his expression carefully neutral despite obvious shock. This is impossible," the admiral said, his voice tight with disbelief. "The Separatist fleet. You destroyed it? Alone?" "Obviously," Vegeta replied. "Your Vader said they were a threat. They weren't. Now give me what I was promised. Information about the Force and dimensional travel." The Admiral's composure cracked slightly. I don't have that authority. You'll need to return to Coruscant. Lord Vader wishes to speak with you personally." Then he should have come himself. Vegeta's patience was wearing thin. I completed his test. I destroyed his separatist remnant. I'm not interested in playing politics with your bureaucracy. Lord Vader anticipated your response, the Admiral said carefully. He instructed me to inform you that the Jedi archives on Coruscant contain extensive records on Force phenomena, including documented instances of interdimensional manifestations. If you want answers about how you arrived here, that's where you'll find them. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. Jedi archives, the religious order that had supposedly mastered the Force before being exterminated. Their knowledge would be invaluable. Techniques, theories, historical precedents. If anyone in this galaxy understood dimensional travel and the interaction between Kai and the Force, it would be them. "Fine," he said. "I'll go to your Coruscant. But tell Vader that if this is a trap, I'll reduce his capital planet to rubble." "I will. Convey your message, sir." The Admiral's hologram flickered. "Transmitting coordinates and clearance codes now. Safe travels." The transmission ended, leaving Vegeta alone with the wreckage and his thoughts. Coruscant, the galactic capital, seat of imperial power, where the Emperor himself resided. Walking into the heart of enemy territory would be risky, even for someone of his capabilities. But risk was merely another word for opportunity. And Vegeta had never shied away from challenges, especially when answers to impossible questions waited on the other side. He set course for the core worlds, his appropriated datapad displaying a route through hyperspace lanes toward the galaxy's center. As his ship jumped to light speed, Vegeta allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. This galaxy was proving more interesting than he'd initially believed. The Force, the technology, the warriors, all pieces of a puzzle he was beginning to understand. And soon, he'd have access to the knowledge that would either send him home or give him the power to rule this reality as absolutely as he'd conquered worlds in his own. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn that the Prince of all Saiyans answered to no one. Coruscant was a monument to civilization's triumph over nature. An entire planet encased in metal and transparent steel, its surface invisible beneath cityscape that stretched from pole to pole. Billions of beings lived in vertical communities that reached kilometers into the sky. Their lives governed by economic castes that determined whether they saw sunlight or dwelled in the perpetual shadows of the lower levels. Vegeta's stolen patrol craft emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge, immediately painted by 1,000 targeting sensors. Imperial security was absolute here. No ship moved without authorization. No vessel approached without clearance. The computational power analyzing his craft in that first second exceeded the processing capability of entire planetary governments. Unidentified vessel. Transmit clearance codes immediately or be destroyed. A cold voice demanded through the comm system. Vegeta input the codes the Admiral had provided, and the hostile locks disengaged. Imperial clearance accepted. You are cleared for approach vector 779. Deviate from assigned course, and you will be fired upon without warning. The Saiyan Prince guided his ship through the designated path, noting the sheer concentration of military hardware in orbit. Dozens of star destroyers hung in geosynchronous positions, their weapons pointed both outward to defend against external threats and inward to ensure no rebellion could take root. Fighter patrols crisscrossed established routes with mechanical precision. Orbital defense platforms bristled with firepower that could glass continents. They're terrified, Vegeta observed. All this power, all this control, because they fear what happens if they show weakness for even a moment. The patrol craft descended through Coruscant's atmosphere, passing through cloud layers and into the eternal twilight of the upper city. Skyscrapers that dwarfed mountains rose on all sides, their sides covered in holographic advertisements and navigation lights. Speeder traffic flowed in organized streams, millions of vehicles moving in choreographed patterns that suggested sophisticated traffic control AI. His destination was the Imperial Palace, a massive pyramidal structure that dominated the planet's government district. Once it had been the Jedi Temple, the spiritual heart of an order that claimed to serve the Force above all else. Now it was the seat of Imperial power, its halls walked by Stormtroopers instead of Jedi Knights. The irony wasn't lost on Vegeta. In his universe, he'd conquered worlds as a child, enforced Frieza's tyranny before rebellion became possible. He understood the architecture of oppression intimately. This empire was merely another variation on themes he'd seen 100 times before. His ship touched down on a restricted landing platform, flanked immediately by stormtroopers in pristine armor. They maintained precise formation, weapons ready but not aimed. A show of force tempered by caution. Apparently, word of what he'd done in Siswena had spread. Vegeta descended the boarding ramp and was met by an officer in an imperial gray uniform, his bearing suggesting high rank and political acumen. "I am Moff Jarek, administrator of this sector. Lord Vader has requested your presence in the archive wing. I'm to escort you personally." "I don't need an escort," Vegeta said flatly. "Tell me where to go, and I'll find my own way." The palace is a secure facility with restricted access throughout. Without proper clearance, you'd be killed before reaching the archives. Jarek's tone remained professional, despite the implied threat. Lord Vader's orders were explicit. You are to be treated as a dignitary and provided all necessary access. Please, follow me. Vegeta considered blasting through whatever security they threw at him, but that would waste time and accomplish nothing. He was here for information, not conflict. Lead the way. They walked through corridors that reeked of imperial grandeur. Polished floors, high ceilings, walls adorned with propaganda celebrating the Emperor's vision. Stormtroopers stood at attention at regular intervals, their armor gleaming under harsh lighting. Officers hurried past on various errands, their conversations dying the moment they noticed Vegeta's presence. "You've caused quite a stir," Jarek observed as they waited for a turbolift. The Siswena operation alone would have justified a full fleet deployment. You accomplished it solo in minutes. The Emperor himself has taken notice. Good. Maybe he'll be smart enough to leave me alone. Jarek's expression suggested he thought that unlikely, but was too diplomatic to say so. The Emperor is interested in unique phenomena. Your abilities fall well outside established parameters. He'll want to understand them, perhaps find ways to replicate or control them. He can try. Vegeta's smile was cold. It won't end well for him. The turbo lift arrived, and they descended through dozens of levels, passing through security checkpoints that required biometric scans and clearance verification. At each station, stormtroopers studied Vegeta with wary eyes, their body language suggesting they'd been thoroughly briefed on his capabilities. Finally, they reached the archive wing, a vast chamber that had once housed the Jedi Order's collected wisdom. Holocrons, data cards, ancient texts, and holographic records filled shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. Most showed signs of damage, burn marks, missing sections, evidence of systematic purging. The Jedi archives, Jarek explained. After Order 66, the Emperor ordered most records destroyed. What remains is heavily censored. However, Lord Vader has granted you access to restricted sections that even most Imperials cannot view. Where are the records on dimensional phenomena? Section 7, Subsection Theta. Jedi investigations into force anomalies that defied conventional understanding. Jarek gestured toward a distant aisle. The terminals there will provide access. Lord Vader will join you shortly. The Moff departed with his escort, leaving Vegeta alone in the archives. The Saiyan Prince walked between towering shelves, studying the remnants of the Jedi legacy. He could feel the Force here more intensely than anywhere else. Echoes of thousands of Force users who had studied and meditated in this space, their presence somehow imprinted on the very walls. At Terminal 7 Theta, he began accessing files. The interface was intuitive enough, and his crash course in galactic technology paid dividends. Records scrolled past, documented cases of Force phenomena that the Jedi had investigated over millennia. Space-time distortions, dimensional rifts, beings who appeared from nowhere with no Force signature. Reports of warriors who wielded energies the Force couldn't touch. Vegeta leaned forward, reading with increasing interest. The cases were rare, perhaps one every few centuries, but consistent. The Jedi had encountered dimensional travelers before. Most had been confused, lost, desperate to return home. The Order had tried to help, with varying degrees of success. But one case stood out: a warrior named Revan, who had supposedly traveled to the edges of known space and returned changed, wielding power that transcended traditional Force understanding. The records were fragmentary, heavily redacted, but they suggested Revan had encountered something in the unknown regions, a civilization or entity that existed outside the Force's normal parameters. Fascinating reading material. Vegeta didn't turn at the mechanical voice. He'd sensed Vader's approach through the Force, felt the Dark Lord's presence like a cold weight pressing against reality. Your Jedi encountered dimensional travelers before, Vegeta said, still studying the terminal. They tried to send them home. Did they succeed? Unknown. Vader moved to stand beside him, his breathing filling the archives with its rhythmic cadence. Most of those records were destroyed. What remained suggests that return was possible but difficult. It required specific Force techniques and immense power. Techniques you possess? No. Vader's honesty was surprising. I am powerful, but my knowledge is incomplete. The Emperor hoards the deepest secrets of the Force, sharing only what serves his purposes. If you want true understanding, you would need access to the Sith archives. And those are where? Scattered, hidden, guarded by the Emperor himself. Vader paused, and when he spoke again, his tone carried an undercurrent Vegeta couldn't quite identify. But there is another path. The unknown regions where Revan traveled. The Jedi suspected something existed there. A nexus of power that transcended the Force as we understand it. Vegeta finally turned to face the Dark Lord. You're suggesting I search the entire galaxy for mythical power sources instead of forcing your Emperor to share what he knows. I'm suggesting that the Emperor will never willingly grant you the knowledge you seek. He views all power as his to control. Vader's mask tilted slightly. But if you found your own path to understanding, if you discovered knowledge he doesn't possess, then you would have leverage. Power he cannot simply seize. You're playing a dangerous game, Vegeta observed. Helping me undermines your Emperor. What do you gain? The satisfaction of seeing Palpatine recognize he is not omnipotent. There was venom in Vader's mechanical voice, decades of resentment compressed into simple words. I am his servant. I wear this armor because of his manipulations. But you? He gestured toward Vegeta. You exist outside his control. You represent a variable he cannot account for. That interests me greatly." Vegeta studied the Dark Lord with new appreciation. Vader wasn't simply following orders. He was actively working to introduce chaos into the Emperor's plans. The Sith were supposedly master manipulators. But here was evidence they manipulated each other just as readily as they did their enemies. "Tell me about the unknown regions," Vegeta commanded. "Uncharted space beyond the Outer Rim. The Empire has avoided serious exploration. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. Strange phenomena occur there. Ships vanish without trace. Entire fleets report anomalies that defy physics." Vader activated a holographic display, showing a star map with vast sections marked in red. The Jedi believed something existed at the unknown region's heart. A source of power older than the Force itself. "Or something from another dimension," Vegeta added, his mind working through possibilities. "If dimensional barriers are thinner there, if the fabric between realities is weaker, that would explain the anomalies." An intriguing theory. Vader deactivated the display. But investigating would require weeks of travel, significant resources, and the risk of encountering threats even you might find challenging. "I've faced gods," Vegeta said dismissively. "Your unknown regions don't frighten me." "Then perhaps you should be frightened." A new voice echoed through the archives, ancient and poisonous. "Pride before investigation is how warriors become corpses." Emperor Palpatine emerged from the shadows between shelves, his yellow eyes gleaming beneath his hood. The force around him was different from Vader's. Not a heavy weight, but a suffocating presence, as if reality itself bent to accommodate his will. Vegeta felt the dark side energy rolling off the Emperor in waves that would have corrupted lesser beings through proximity alone. "So, you're the Emperor," Vegeta said, unimpressed by the theatrical entrance. "I was wondering when you'd make an appearance. And I have been waiting to meet the warrior who exists outside the Force." Palpatine's smile was predatory. "Tell me, Saiyan Prince, do you understand what you represent? You are an impossibility made flesh. In a galaxy bound by the Force, you are free. In a reality governed by ancient laws, you make your own rules. Flattery won't work on me. I'm not flattering. I'm stating facts." The Emperor circled slowly, his gaze never leaving Vegeta. "Your power is unprecedented. With proper training, proper knowledge, you could reshape this galaxy. You could stand as a god among mortals." "I'm not interested in ruling your galaxy," Vegeta said. "I want to go home." "Home." Palpatine's laugh was dry and humorless. "But what if I told you that home is impossible? What if the dimensional breach that brought you here was one way? What if you're trapped in our reality for eternity?" Vegeta's Kai flared involuntarily, his aura crackling with barely contained fury. "You're lying. Perhaps, perhaps not." The Emperor's smile widened. "But consider, why would the Force allow you to leave? You are too valuable, too unique. The galaxy itself may have conspired to keep you here, to add your power to the eternal struggle between light and darkness. The Force doesn't control me. No, but it affects you nonetheless." Palpatine gestured, and the archives seemed to darken. Shadows deepening until only his yellow eyes remained clearly visible. "I can feel it pressing against your strange energy, attempting to understand, attempting to categorize. And slowly, inexorably, it will succeed. You will become part of this galaxy's tapestry, subject to its laws, bound by its limitations. Unless..." Vegeta recognized manipulation when he heard it. unless you accelerate the process on your own terms." The Emperor's voice dropped to a whisper. "I possess knowledge that could help you harness both your native power and the Force simultaneously. Techniques that would make you truly unstoppable. All I ask in exchange is your service, not as a slave, but as a partner. Together, we could reshape the galaxy into something magnificent." Vegeta considered the offer for exactly 3 seconds before laughing. "You actually think I'd serve you? The same Emperor who supposedly hunted down all the Jedi, who rules through fear and oppression? I've worked for tyrants before. It never ends well." Palpatine's expression hardened. "Then you choose conflict. I choose freedom." Vegeta settled into a combat stance. "And if you try to stop me from finding my own path home, I'll destroy everything you've built." The archives exploded into violence. Palpatine unleashed Force lightning with power that made Vader's earlier attack look gentle. Twin streams of purple-white energy that could have reduced Star Destroyers to slag. Vader ignited his lightsaber and struck from the opposite angle, crimson blade arcing toward Vegeta's neck. And the Force itself seemed to compress, attempting to crush the Saiyan Prince under telekinetic pressure that could flatten buildings. Vegeta's response was to let his power truly manifest for the first time since arriving in this galaxy. His aura exploded outward, white energy flaring so brightly it lit the archives like a newborn star. The Force lightning scattered against his Kai field, unable to penetrate the barrier of raw energy. Vader's lightsaber struck and was deflected, the blade unable to find purchase against power that existed on a fundamentally different level. And the telekinetic crush simply failed, the Force unable to grip something that refused to be bound by its laws. "You want to see what I'm truly capable of?" Vegeta roared, his power surging higher. "Let me show you the difference between your petty force and real power." The shockwave from his transformation tore through the archives. Shelves toppled, holocrons shattered, and the floor beneath his feet cracked from the pressure. Palpatine stumbled backward, genuine surprise crossing his withered features. Vader held his ground, but was visibly straining against the energy that washed over him like a physical tide. "Impossible," the Emperor breathed. "Such power shouldn't exist within biological limits." "I'm a Saiyan," Vegeta snarled, golden energy crackling around his clenched fists. "We don't believe in limits. We break them." He moved faster than either Sith could track, appearing behind Palpatine with his fist already in motion. The Emperor's Force barriers erected instantly. Multiple layers of protective energy that had withstood lightsabers and turbolaser fire. Vegeta's punch shattered them like glass and struck Palpatine's shoulder, sending the Emperor flying across the archives to crash into a distant wall. Vader attacked immediately, his lightsaber a blur of red light as he executed killing sequences with mechanical precision. But Vegeta had fought Vader before, had learned the Dark Lord's patterns. He evaded without apparent effort, each dodge timed perfectly to leave Vader overextended. "You're strong," Vegeta acknowledged, catching Vader's blade between his palms. "But you rely too much on that armor, on your Force techniques. What happens when you face someone who doesn't play by your rules?" He twisted, wrenched the lightsaber from Vader's grip, and drove his knee into the Dark Lord's chest plate with carefully calculated force. The armor cracked, but didn't break. Vegeta had learned enough about Vader's life support systems to know killing him would be pointless. But the Dark Lord staggered, his breathing becoming labored as damaged systems struggled to compensate. Palpatine rose from the rubble, his face twisted in fury. "You dare strike the Emperor? You dare!" "I dare whatever I want," Vegeta interrupted. "That's the point. I'm not your Jedi, bound by philosophy. I'm not your Sith, corrupted by the dark side. I'm something you have no frame of reference for, and that terrifies you." The Emperor's hands moved in complex patterns, and the Force gathered with unprecedented intensity. This wasn't simple lightning or telekinesis. This was power drawn from decades of Sith mastery, from ancient knowledge hoarded and refined. The air itself began to crack, reality straining under the pressure. Vegeta felt it building and made a tactical decision. Fighting both Sith Lords simultaneously in the heart of their power would be satisfying, but ultimately wasteful. He'd proven his point, demonstrated that their force couldn't bind him, their combined might couldn't defeat him. Continuing the battle would only damage the archives and destroy information he might still need. "We're done here," he announced, his aura stabilizing. "I'm leaving Coruscant. I'm going to the unknown regions to find my own answers. And if either of you tries to stop me, I'll reduce this planet to rubble on my way out." "You cannot simply leave," Palpatine hissed. "I rule this galaxy. You will submit or what?" Vegeta's smile was predatory. "You'll try to kill me? You just saw how well that worked. Face reality, Emperor. I'm not part of your game. I'm a piece from a different board entirely." He turned and walked toward the archive's exit, his back deliberately exposed. Neither Sith attacked. Palpatine because his tactical mind recognized futility when he saw it. Vader because something in him appreciated the warrior's refusal to bow. "This isn't over," the Emperor called after him. "You may leave, but you cannot hide. I will find a way to control you, or I will find a way to eliminate you." "You're welcome to try," Vegeta replied without looking back. "But consider this. I destroyed your separatist remnant in minutes. I fought both of you to a standstill in your own palace. What makes you think you can stop me?" He ascended through the palace's levels, stormtroopers parting before him like water before a ship's prow. None dared challenge him. None even raised their weapons. Word of the Archives battle had already spread through command channels, and no one wanted to be the fool who provoked the warrior who had just fought the Emperor himself. Vegeta reached his commandeered ship and lifted off, Imperial traffic control wisely clearing his departure path without comment. As he accelerated through Coruscant's atmosphere toward the freedom of space, he allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. The unknown regions awaited, answers awaited, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, he would find the key to returning home, or he would forge a new destiny in this strange galaxy. Either way, he would do it on his own terms. The transition to hyperspace was smoother than Vegeta expected. The stolen patrol craft systems hummed with energy as stars stretched into lines of light, then collapsed into the blue-white tunnel of faster-than-light travel. Behind him, Coruscant dwindled to a speck, then vanished entirely. The heart of Imperial power left reeling from his confrontation with the Emperor. He'd taken more than just the ship. During his brief time in the archives, he'd downloaded terabytes of data, star charts, historical records, and every fragment the Jedi had collected about the unknown regions. The information was incomplete, heavily censored in places, but it provided a starting point, a direction. "Unknown regions," Vegeta muttered, studying the navigation display. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." The journey would take weeks, even at hyperspace velocities. The patrol craft wasn't designed for long-range travel. Its supplies were limited, its hyperdrive barely capable of reaching the galactic frontier. But it would suffice. He didn't need comfort, only direction. As the ship hurtled through the dimensional tunnel, Vegeta turned his attention inward. The Force still pressed against his Kai, that constant background interference that made every technique slightly less efficient. But now he understood it better. After facing both Vader and Palpatine, after feeling the full spectrum of light and dark side manipulation, patterns were emerging. It's not an enemy, he realized during a long meditation session. It's a different language. My Kai speaks one dialect, the Force speaks another. He began experimenting, carefully channeling small amounts of Kai while simultaneously reaching out with his growing Force sensitivity. The results were explosive. When he tried to merge the energies, they reacted like matter and antimatter. Violent rejection that threatened to tear him apart from the inside. Stubborn, he grunted after a particularly painful feedback surge left him gasping on the ship's floor. But everything has rules. I just need to learn yours. Days passed in the monotony of hyperspace travel. He studied the archives data, cross-referencing Jedi theories about dimensional phenomena with his own experiences. The record suggested that what the Jedi called the Force might be just one manifestation of a broader cosmic energy, similar to how Kai represented life energy in his universe, but structured differently. One entry particularly caught his attention. A Jedi Master named Kakruk had theorized about the unifying force, a concept that transcended the light-dark dichotomy and suggested the energy field connected not just living things, but all realities simultaneously. The theory had been declared heretical and suppressed, but the fragments remaining hinted at something profound. If the Force connects everything, Vegeta mused, then it must connect to my universe too. There has to be a bridge somewhere. His meditation deepened. He stopped fighting the Force and started observing it, studying how it flowed, how it responded to emotion, how it connected to living beings across vast distances. Slowly, carefully, he began manipulating tiny amounts of Force energy alongside his Kai, not attempting to merge them, but letting them operate in parallel. The breakthrough came during a combat simulation. He was running through Saiyan Prince in the ship's cramped cargo area, his movements precise and powerful despite the limited space. As he executed a particularly complex sequence, he felt the Force responding to his motions, not interfering, but amplifying. When he threw a punch, the Force carried the impact beyond his physical reach, creating a telekinetic shockwave that dented the far wall. Interesting, he murmured, studying his fist. The Force follows intent. It doesn't need separate manipulation. It responds to action itself. He repeated the motion, this time consciously directing the Force along with his Kai. The result was a visible distortion in the air, a concussive blast that shattered a storage container 20 feet away. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Vegeta felt genuine excitement. This wasn't just adapting to an alien energy. This was evolution. The Force could amplify his Kai techniques in ways he'd never imagined, creating synergies that might surpass anything he'd achieved in his own universe. His comm system chimed, an incoming transmission on an encrypted Imperial frequency. He almost ignored it, then recognized the signature. Vader. He accepted the communication, and the Dark Lord's hologram materialized in the cockpit. You are heading toward the unknown regions. Observant, Vegeta said dryly. Did you call to wish me luck? I called to warn you. Vader's mechanical voice carried unusual intensity. The Emperor has dispatched multiple fleets to intercept you. He cannot allow you to access power he doesn't control. Let them come. I destroyed one fleet already. These are different. Vader's hologram gestured, and star charts appeared showing Imperial movements. The 7th Fleet, commanded by Grand Admiral Thrawn. The 11th Fleet, specializing in anti-personnel operations. And the Emperor's personal guard, led by his new enforcer, a being you may find familiar. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. Familiar how? The Emperor has been experimenting with beings who possess unusual abilities. This one came to his attention recently, a warrior from beyond our galaxy, like yourself, but one who embraced the dark side willingly. Vader paused. He calls himself Lord Starkiller, and he has been specifically trained to counter your abilities. Starkiller? Vegeta repeated, unimpressed. Let him try. Do not underestimate him. Vader's tone suggested personal experience. The Emperor has poured decades of Sith knowledge into this warrior, combined with technology that enhances his connection to the dark side. He represents everything the Emperor wishes you had become, a weapon completely under his control. Why are you telling me this? Vegeta asked suspiciously. You serve the Emperor. I serve power, Vader corrected. And you represent a power outside his control. That has value to me. The transmission flickered. The first interception point will be at the edge of the unknown regions, near the Chiss border. Thrawn will be waiting. He is not like other Imperial commanders. He thinks in patterns you cannot anticipate. The communication ended, leaving Vegeta alone with the warning. He considered his options. Changing course would be prudent, but cowardly. Continuing meant walking into a trap designed by someone Vader considered dangerous. He smiled. Finally, a real challenge. Days turned into weeks. The patrol craft's supplies dwindled, but Vegeta's understanding grew. He'd mastered basic force manipulation alongside his key techniques, learning to create hybrid attacks that leverage both energy sources. The constant interference had become a tool. He could now feel the Force as an extension of his senses, detecting presences light years away. He felt the Imperial fleet long before he reached the Chiss border. It was different from the separatist forces he'd destroyed. More organized, more disciplined, with patterns of energy that suggested brilliant tactical thinking. The ships were positioned not just to block his path, but to create kill zones that accounted for every possible evasion tactic. Thrawn, Vegeta murmured, studying the sensor displays. Let's see what makes you so special. He dropped out of hyperspace at the calculated interception point and found himself facing not just a fleet, but a masterpiece of military positioning. 3 Imperial-class Star Destroyers formed the core, but they were supported by dozens of smaller vessels. Interdictor cruisers to prevent escape, artillery frigates positioned at extreme range, and TIE defender squadrons that moved with coordination he hadn't seen from Imperial forces before. A communication request arrived, and Vegeta accepted. The hologram that appeared was unlike any Imperial officer he'd seen. Blue-skinned, red-eyed, with an aristocratic bearing that suggested both intelligence and absolute confidence. I am Grand Admiral Thrawn, the figure said, his voice calm and analytical. You are Vegeta, the Saiyan Prince. I have studied your combat patterns from Tatooine, Siswena, and Coruscant. Your abilities are remarkable. Flattery won't save your fleet, Vegeta replied. I do not flatter, I analyze. Thrawn's red eyes seemed to look through the hologram, studying Vegeta with unnerving intensity. You fight with overwhelming power, but your tactics are predictable. You favor direct confrontation, overwhelming force, and psychological intimidation. Effective against undisciplined opponents, but against coordinated strategy. He smiled slightly. Less so. We'll see about that. Indeed we shall. Thrawn gestured, and the fleet began moving with choreographed precision. I have dedicated considerable time to understanding you, Vegeta. Your power may be unprecedented, but your mind follows patterns, and all patterns have weaknesses. The battle began not with a massive barrage, but with precisely calculated strikes. The artillery frigates fired from extreme range, their shots timed to arrive simultaneously from different vectors. The TIE defenders moved in formations that created overlapping fields of fire. Their attacks designed not to kill, but to herd. Vegeta launched from his ship, Ki propelling him toward the nearest Star Destroyer. Immediately, the interdictor cruisers activated their gravity wells, and he felt his velocity drop precipitously. The force interference intensified. Thrawn had somehow amplified the effect, creating zones where Vegeta's energy worked at reduced efficiency. Clever, Vegeta admitted, adjusting his approach, but not clever enough. He accelerated again, pushing through the gravity wells with raw power. Turbo laser fire converged on his position, but he'd learned from the Separatist battle. He moved in unpredictable patterns, using short-range teleports that the targeting computers couldn't anticipate. But Thrawn had anticipated this too. The TIE defenders didn't try to track him. Instead, they fired into empty space where probability suggested he would appear. One blast caught him square in the chest, the impact strong enough to stagger him momentarily. How? He wondered, recalculating. The answer came when he sensed the force being used not as a weapon, but as a predictive tool. Someone aboard Thrawn's flagship was using force precognition to anticipate his movements, feeding the data to the fleet's targeting systems. Vegeta changed tactics. Instead of attacking the capital ships, he targeted the interdictor cruisers first. Their gravity wells were the biggest limitation, reducing his speed and making him vulnerable. He gathered Kai for a Gallic gun, aiming at the nearest cruiser. The shot never fired. A presence touched his awareness, dark, powerful, and chillingly familiar in a way he couldn't place. Then a voice spoke directly into his mind, bypassing conventional communication entirely. "Hello, Prince Vegeta. I've been waiting for you." A ship emerged from behind Thrawn's flagship, sleek, black, and utterly alien in design. It moved with grace that shouldn't be possible in real space, its contours suggesting organic rather than mechanical origins. As Vegeta watched, a figure emerged from the ship, floating in the vacuum without protection, surrounded by a dark side aura so intense it visible distorted space around him. Lord Starkiller. He was humanoid, dressed in black armor that incorporated both Sith symbolism and technology Vegeta didn't recognize. His face was concealed by a helmet, but the presence was unmistakable. This was the familiar being Vader had warned him about. "You're the Emperor's new pet?" Vegeta called out, his voice carrying through the vacuum via Kai projection. "I am what you could have been," Starkiller replied, his voice a distorted echo that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I embraced the power offered to me. I became more than I was. You cling to your pride. Your independence, it makes you weak. Weak." Vegeta's aura flared. "Let's test that theory." He fired a Kai blast that should have vaporized a small moon. Starkiller didn't dodge. He caught the energy in one hand, the golden light twisting and darkening until it became a sphere of black fire. Then he threw it back, the attack now imbued with dark side energy that screamed through the void. Vegeta deflected it, but felt the dark side corruption attempting to seep through his Kai field. Interesting trick, but tricks won't save you. He closed the distance, fist driving toward Starkiller's helmet. The dark side warrior met him blow for blow, their impacts creating shockwaves that rippled through nearby ships. Starkiller fought with a style Vegeta recognized. It incorporated elements of Saiyan combat, Jedi forms, and Sith techniques, blended into something uniquely dangerous. "You're not from this galaxy either," Vegeta realized as they separated, trading energy blasts that lit up the darkness between stars. "I was taken as you were," Starkiller confirmed. "But where you resisted, I accepted. The dark side offered power beyond anything my home universe could provide. Why struggle against inevitability?" "Because I bow to no one," Vegeta snarled, his power increasing. "Not in my universe, not in this one." Their battle became the center of the conflict. Two beings from beyond the Star Wars galaxy testing their might against each other. Thrawn's fleet provided support, creating obstacles for Vegeta while giving Starkiller clear attack angles. The coordination was flawless. The Grand Admiral using his new weapon with surgical precision. Vegeta found himself pressed harder than he'd been since arriving in this reality. Starkiller's power was genuine. He'd fully embraced the dark side, channeling it in ways that amplified his native abilities beyond normal limits. And with Thrawn's tactical genius directing the overall battle, Vegeta was fighting on two fronts simultaneously. He adapted, as he always did. He began using his growing force sensitivity to counter Starkiller's precognition, creating false intentions that confused the dark side warrior's foresight. He targeted the fleet's command structure, destroying relay ships that coordinated Thrawn's brilliant patterns. But Starkiller kept getting stronger. Each time Vegeta landed a solid hit, the dark side warrior would rise again, his power increased, his connection to the Force deepened. It was as if damage made him stronger, a twisted version of the Saiyan Zenkai boost, corrupted by dark side energy. "You cannot win," Starkiller taunted as they clashed again, their auras creating a miniature star between them. "The dark side is limitless. My power grows with every moment. Yours is constrained by your refusal to embrace greater strength." "You call that strength?" Vegeta shot back, deflecting a blast of Sith lightning that would have disintegrated a capital ship. "Letting the dark side control you? Becoming a slave to someone else's power? Better to be a slave to power than to die with principles," Starkiller retorted. The comment struck something deep in Vegeta's psyche. He'd been there before, serving Frieza out of necessity, compromising his pride for survival. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, paid for it with his dignity and nearly his soul. "No," Vegeta said, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "I've walked that path. I know where it leads." He stopped fighting against the Force entirely. Instead, he opened himself to it. Not to the dark side, not to the light, but to the energy itself. The unifying force that Kakruk had theorized about. The connection between all things, all realities. And he felt it. Not as interference, not as an enemy, but as a symphony of energy that had been waiting for him to learn its language. His ki changed. The golden light deepened, took on new dimensions, began resonating with the Force rather than fighting against it. He wasn't merging the energies. He was conducting them, letting them operate in harmony while maintaining their separate identities. Starkiller sensed the change and hesitated. "What are you doing?" "Evolving," Vegeta said simply. He raised one hand, and reality itself seemed to bend around his fingers. Kai and Force energy swirled together, not fighting, but complementing, creating something that was more than the sum of its parts. The attack that launched toward Starkiller wasn't pure ki or pure force. It was something new, something that defied classification. Starkiller tried to absorb it as he had before, but this time the energy refused to be corrupted. It passed through his dark side defenses and struck him directly, not causing physical damage, but severing his connection to the Force. The dark side warrior screamed as his power source was abruptly cut off, his enhanced abilities collapsing. "What have you done?" Starkiller demanded, his voice losing its distorted echo, becoming merely human. "Freed you," Vegeta replied. "Now you get to discover who you really are without the dark side propping you up." With Starkiller neutralized, the battle shifted dramatically. Thrawn's brilliant tactics were still formidable, but without his Force-enhanced weapon, the Grand Admiral was fighting with conventional forces against an opponent who had just transcended conventional understanding. Vegeta turned his attention to the fleet, his new understanding of Chi-Force synergy making him more dangerous than ever. He moved through the Star Destroyers not as a warrior, but as a force of nature, his attacks precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy, to demonstrate superiority without unnecessary slaughter. When he reached Thrawn's flagship, he didn't breach the hull. He simply appeared on the bridge, his arrival so sudden that the crew had no time to react. Thrawn turned slowly, his red eyes showing the first hint of genuine surprise. "Fascinating. You've evolved beyond my models." "Your models were based on who I was," Vegeta said, "not who I am becoming." He studied the Grand Admiral, noting the art displays that covered the bridge walls, not military diagrams, but sculptures and paintings from various cultures. Thrawn understood beings through their art, through the patterns they created when expressing themselves. "You see the patterns," Vegeta continued, "but you don't understand what creates them. You study the brushstrokes without understanding the artist." Thrawn considered this, then nodded slowly. "A valid critique. Perhaps I have been limited in my perspective." He gestured toward the view screen, where his fleet was regrouping after the unexpected defeat. "You have proven my strategy inadequate. I will withdraw." "Just like that?" Vegeta asked, surprised. "I am a tactician, not a fanatic. Continuing this engagement would waste Imperial resources for no gain." Thrawn's red eyes gleamed. "But know this, I will update my models. I will study this new evolution of yours, and should we meet again, the outcome may be different." Vegeta almost smiled. "I look forward to it." He returned to space, finding Starkiller floating helpless where he'd left him. The Darkside warrior's ship had been captured by Thrawn's forces. Apparently, the Grand Admiral had contingency plans for everything. As the Imperial fleet began its withdrawal, Vegeta felt a new presence approaching from the direction of the unknown regions. Not Imperial, not Sith, but something ancient and powerful in a way he hadn't encountered before. The unknown regions were calling. And now, with his new understanding of how Kai and the Force could work together, he was finally ready to answer. He looked toward the galactic frontier, where stars grew sparse and mysteries waited in the darkness. Somewhere out there were answers about how he'd arrived here, and perhaps how he could return home. Or perhaps something even more interesting awaited. The transition from known space to the unknown regions was not a clean boundary, but a gradual dissolution of certainty. Stars grew sparse, navigation beacons ceased their constant pinging, and the very fabric of space seemed to shift in subtle, unsettling ways. Vegeta's stolen patrol craft shuddered as it crossed an invisible threshold, its systems protesting the transition with a chorus of warning chimes. He had disabled most of the alerts hours ago. The Imperial technology was primitive, compared to what he was beginning to understand about this galaxy's true nature. The Force wasn't just an energy field. It was a living tapestry. And here at the edges of known space, that tapestry was frayed, thin in places, revealing glimpses of what lay beneath, or beyond. His new understanding of Chi-Force synergy had changed everything. No longer fighting the constant pressure, he now rode it like a current. His consciousness expanded to sense patterns that would have been invisible to him weeks before. He could feel the ebb and flow of cosmic energy, the gravitational tides of distant galaxies, and something else. Whispers of presences so ancient, they predated the very concept of civilization in this reality. The first anomaly appeared as a distortion in the starfield ahead. Not a planet or nebula, but a region where space itself seemed folded, light bending around invisible contours in reality. As he approached, his sensors went haywire before failing entirely. The Force here was different, wilder, less structured than in the core worlds. Natural dimensional weak point, Vegeta murmured, relying entirely on his enhanced senses now. This is what the Jedi were studying. He guided the ship manually, his Kai extending to protect the vessel from stresses that would have torn apart anything less fortunate. The transition was like pushing through viscous liquid, resistance that gradually yielded to his will. Then, suddenly, the pressure vanished. He had entered a pocket of real space that shouldn't exist, a bubble universe nestled within the unknown regions. And floating at its center was a structure that defied all conventional architecture. It appeared to be a temple, but constructed from what looked like solidified light and shadow. Its geometry shifted even as he watched, angles reconfiguring themselves in ways that hurt to perceive. It was ancient. He could feel the weight of millennia in the very space around it, but also timeless. Existing outside the normal flow of causality. This was no Sith or Jedi construction. This was something else entirely. As his ship drifted closer, a voice spoke directly into his mind, bypassing all sensory input. You have come far, child of another reality. Few who enter this place possess the clarity to perceive its true nature. Vegeta stepped from his ship, floating in the vacuum toward the shifting structure. Who are you? We are the architects, the first beings to comprehend the pattern that connects all realities. We built this place as an anchor point, a stable reference in the infinite sea of possibilities. The interior of the temple was even more impossible than the exterior. A space that seemed infinite yet confined, where time flowed in multiple directions simultaneously. Vegeta saw glimpses of possible futures, echoes of pasts that never were, and present moments from countless alternate realities. A figure materialized before him, humanoid but translucent, composed of light that contained all colors and none. Your arrival was foreseen, though the specifics remained uncertain. The Force has been waiting for one such as you. Waiting? Vegeta's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? The Force is not merely an energy field, as the Jedi and Sith believe. It is a conscious entity, a living universe experiencing itself through countless perspectives. But even consciousness can become stagnant, trapped in repetitive patterns. The architect gestured, and images of the eternal conflict between light and dark appeared around them. This struggle has defined this reality for millennia. Balance is achieved, then lost, then sought again in an endless cycle. Vegeta watched the history of the Jedi and Sith unfold in accelerated flashes. So, the Force brought me here to break the cycle? Not brought, allowed. The architect's form shifted, becoming more substantial. Dimensional travelers appear occasionally. Most are absorbed into the existing power structure, become Jedi or Sith, or are destroyed by them. But you refused assimilation. You created a third path. The images changed, showing Vegeta's battles, his refusal to join either side, his development of Chi-Force synergy, his confrontation with Starkiller. You have demonstrated that the Force can interact with external energy sources without corruption or domination. This is unprecedented. I didn't come here to solve your cosmic problems, Vegeta said. I want to return to my universe. And so you shall, if that remains your choice. The architect gestured again, and a complex pattern of energy appeared between them. A map of dimensional boundaries, with the Star Wars galaxy as one point in an infinite network. But first, understand what you represent. The explanation unfolded not as words, but as direct knowledge transfer. The Force had reached a state of equilibrium so perfect it had become stagnant. The prophecy of the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, had brought balance, but balance itself had become another form of imprisonment. The Force needed innovation, new perspectives, evolution. Vegeta's arrival represented the first genuine innovation in millennia. Your key energy interacts with the Force not as foreign element, but as complementary system. You have proven that the Force can grow, can incorporate new paradigms without losing its essential nature. This changes everything. So what? Vegeta demanded. You want me to teach your Jedi this new power? The Jedi are part of the old pattern, as are the Sith. Your purpose is greater. The architect's form solidified into something resembling a human male, with features that seem to shift between countless species. The Force seeks to evolve beyond the light-dark dichotomy. You are the catalyst. Before Vegeta could respond, the temple shuddered. A presence he recognized immediately began forcing its way into the pocket dimension. Dark, possessive, and utterly determined. Palpatine had found them. The Emperor senses what is happening, the architect communicated, its calm undisturbed. He understands that your evolution threatens his dominion. He will not allow the Force to change beyond his control. The temple's walls shimmered, and the Emperor materialized within the space, his form surrounded by dark side energy so intense it blackened the very air around him. But he wasn't alone. A dozen figures accompanied him, their presences masked until now. Ancient Sith Lords, their spirits bound to Palpatine's will, manifestations of the dark side's history. Fascinating, Palpatine hissed, his yellow eyes scanning the impossible architecture. A nexus of pure Force energy, untouched by mortal hands. And you would give this power to an outsider? This power was never mine to give, the architect replied. It belongs to the Force itself, which is awakening to new possibilities. The Force serves those strong enough to command it. Palpatine's voice echoed with the weight of multiple Sith spirits. I will not allow its purity to be diluted by this foreign contamination. The ancient Sith Lords moved to surround Vegeta, their spectral forms gaining substance within the temple. These were not like Vader or Starkiller. These were beings who had mastered the dark side across millennia, their knowledge encompassing techniques lost to modern Sith. Vegeta felt the pressure immediately. This wasn't just dark side energy. This was the accumulated hatred and ambition of countless generations, focused through Palpatine as a lens. The very air began to crystallize with dark intent. The pattern reasserts itself, the architect observed. The dark side seeks to absorb or destroy innovation. This is the crisis point. "Then let's crisis," Vegeta said, his aura erupting in a new configuration. Ki and Force woven together so tightly, they became indistinguishable. The battle that followed defied all conventional understanding of combat. The ancient Sith Lords attacked not with lightsabers or lightning, but with conceptual weapons, strikes that targeted his very existence, attempts to rewrite his history, to unmake his choices. One Sith Lord projected illusions of Vegeta's past failures, his subservience to Frieza, his defeats by Kakarot, the moments of weakness and doubt. The images sought to undermine his confidence, to remind him of his limitations. Vegeta responded not by denying the memories, but by accepting them. I learned from those failures. They made me stronger. Another Sith attacked his connection to the Force itself, trying to sever the synergy he'd created. But the bond was different now. Not something imposed, but something earned. The attack shattered against his integrated energy field. Palpatine watched from the center of the temple, his form beginning to change. The Sith spirits flowed into him, merging with his consciousness, creating something that was more than Palpatine, more than Sith. A manifestation of the dark side's resistance to change itself. "You cannot win," the Emperor's voice boomed, now multiplied and distorted. "The dark side is the natural state of this galaxy. It feeds on ambition, on passion, on the will to power. Your alien philosophy has no place here." "You're wrong," Vegeta said, feeling the truth of it in his integrated energy. "The dark side is just one expression. The Force is realizing it can be more." He began to understand what the architect had shown him. This wasn't about defeating the Sith. It was about demonstrating a new possibility. The Force itself was watching, learning from this conflict. The Emperor unleashed the full power of the United Sith legacy. Reality within the temple began to unravel, the laws of physics dissolving into pure, dark side energy. Time distorted, space folded, and Vegeta felt his very consciousness being pulled apart. But his Chi-Force synergy created stability within the chaos. Where the dark side sought to dominate and control, his energy sought harmony and integration. He wasn't fighting the dissolution. He was reweaving the fabric of reality around principles of mutual enhancement rather than domination. The ancient Sith Lords began to falter. Their power, though immense, was rooted in a paradigm that was becoming obsolete. The Force was evolving beyond their understanding, and they were becoming relics in a universe that had moved on. One by one, their forms began to dissipate, not destroyed, but transcended. The knowledge they represented was being integrated into the larger Force consciousness, their centuries of experience becoming part of the new pattern rather than dominating it. Palpatine alone remained, but even he was changing. The dark side energy that sustained him was thinning, becoming part of the broader spectrum rather than a separate dominating force. "This is impossible," the Emperor whispered, his form flickering between Palpatine and something far older. "The Sith legacy cannot end this way." "It's not ending," Vegeta said, understanding dawning. "It's becoming part of something larger. The Force is growing up." The final transformation was both sudden and gradual, a paradox made possible by the temple's unique properties. Palpatine's form dissolved not into nothingness, but into pure Force energy, his consciousness merging with the broader tapestry. The Sith were gone, not destroyed, but integrated, their knowledge and experience becoming part of the Force's expanding awareness. The temple stabilized, the shifting architecture settling into a new, permanent configuration. The architect appeared again, its form now more distinct. The pattern has been broken. The Force has evolved beyond the light-dark dichotomy. What comes next will be different. Vegeta felt the change immediately. The constant pressure of the Force was gone, replaced by something more fluid, more responsive. The energy field still connected all living things, but now it celebrated difference rather than seeking balance. Innovation was possible. Growth was possible. You have accomplished what the Chosen One could not, the architect communicated. Not balance, but transcendence. Great, Vegeta said. Now about getting home. The path is open to you now. The architect gestured, and a portal shimmered into existence, a gateway between realities. But know this, your universe and this one are now connected in ways they never were before. The evolution here will ripple across dimensions. Your home may not be exactly as you remember it. Vegeta looked toward the portal, then back at the architect. What happens to this galaxy now? The Empire will falter without the dark side to sustain it. The rebellion will succeed, but without Sith to oppose. The Jedi will need to evolve as well. New Force traditions will emerge. New possibilities. The architect's form began to fade. The galaxy will finally be free to determine its own destiny. Vegeta approached the portal, feeling the pull of his home universe. But something made him pause. The Force. It wanted this all along. The Force is life, and life seeks to grow, to expand, to become more than it was. You were the catalyst, but the potential was always there. He stepped toward the portal, then stopped again. What about Vader? The rebellion? The people caught in the middle of all this? Their stories continue, but now they write their own endings, free from the ancient patterns. The architect's voice was fading now. Go home, Vegeta. Your work here is done. The Saiyan Prince took one last look at the strange temple. At the galaxy he had fundamentally changed without ever meaning to. Then he stepped through the portal, leaving the Star Wars universe forever altered in his wake. The transition was instantaneous. One moment he stood in the temple of the architects. The next he was standing in the wreckage of the hyperbolic time chamber. The familiar scent of ozone and aged paper filled his nostrils. The white expanse stretched endlessly around him, but cracks now spiderwebbed across reality here too. Pale blue energy, reminiscent of the Force, seeped through the fractures. He was home, but the architect's warning echoed in his mind. Your home may not be exactly as you remember it. The door to the chamber hissed open, and Bulma stood there, her eyes wide with shock and relief. Vegeta, where have you been? You vanished 3 days ago during your training. We thought... She stopped, her scientific curiosity overriding her concern. Your energy, it's different. What happened? Vegeta stepped out, his movements fluid in a way they hadn't been before. The gravity of Earth felt different, lighter, yet more complex. I was elsewhere. He looked toward the lookout, sensing something new in the familiar Ki signatures. There was a resonance now, an echo of that other energy. The Force had indeed left its mark, not just on him, but on the very fabric of this universe. Down in the gravity chamber, the proof was immediate. When he powered up, his golden Super Saiyan aura was now threaded with subtle blue strands, the Force seamlessly integrated. A training drone fired a plasma burst at him, and without thinking, he deflected it, not just with Kai, but with a telekinetic nudge that felt as natural as breathing. The drone shattered against the wall. Bulma watched from the observation deck, her scanner beeping frantically. Vegeta, what can you do? He didn't answer, instead focusing inward. He reached out, not with his Kai sense, but with the new hybrid awareness. He could feel the life energy of every being on the planet, not just their power levels, but their emotions, their intentions, the very texture of their spirits. It was overwhelming. But his Saiyan discipline allowed him to filter the torrent of information. The first true test came not from an enemy, but from his son. Trunks, in the middle of his own training, lost control of a Masenko, the errant energy blast heading straight for a populated area of West City. In the past, Vegeta would have simply vaporized it with a superior blast, causing a devastating shockwave. This time, he acted on instinct. He extended a hand, and the raging blue energy of the Masenko simply unraveled. It dissipated into harmless light, its energy safely redirected into the atmosphere. He hadn't destroyed it. He had understood its composition and gently persuaded it to cease being a threat. Trunks stared, dumbfounded. "Father, how?" Vegeta looked at his hands, a rare, thoughtful expression on his face. The applications were staggering. This wasn't just a new power, it was a new philosophy of power. He had spent his entire life breaking limits through overwhelming force. Now, he was learning that some limits could be transcended through understanding. But the universe, it seemed, was determined to test this new understanding. A familiar, hated presence descended upon Earth, Frieza's energy signature, but magnified, twisted by a new, golden form. The tyrant had achieved a new transformation and had come for revenge. The battle began as their fights always did, with planet-shattering blows and boasts of ultimate power. Golden Frieza was faster, stronger, and more brutal than ever. He mocked Vegeta, taunting him about his time serving as his soldier. "Have you been practicing parlor tricks while I've been achieving true godhood, monkey?" Frieza sneered, unleashing a death beam that vaporized a mountain range. Vegeta dodged, not with his old, aggressive speed, but with an effortless flow that made Frieza's attacks seem clumsy and predictable. He wasn't just reacting. He was reading the intent behind the attacks, the flow of malicious energy that preceded them. "You're still so loud, Frieza," Vegeta said, his voice calm. "All that power, and you still fight like a thug." Enraged, Frieza unleashed his ultimate technique, the same supernova that had once destroyed planet Vegeta. A sphere of incandescent death grew in his hands, its gravity well distorting the planet below. The old Vegeta would have met it with a final flash, a contest of raw power that would have left the Earth a scorched cinder. The new Vegeta simply flew towards it. He plunged his hands into the supernova's core. Frieza laughed, expecting him to be vaporized. But Vegeta wasn't trying to overpower it. His ki, guided by his newfound connection to the universal life energy, communicated with the raging stellar fire. He understood its energy signature, its pattern, its very essence. The supernova didn't explode. It imploded, collapsing in on itself with a whisper, its energy dissolving back into the cosmos from which it came. It wasn't a victory of force, but of comprehension. Frieza's jaw dropped. "Impossible!" "You keep using that word," Vegeta said, appearing directly in front of him. "I do not think it means what you think it means." The fight was over. Frieza, for all his new power, was conceptually outmatched. He was a master of destruction, but Vegeta had transcended that narrow path. He disassembled Frieza's energy attacks, redirected his physical blows with minimal effort, and when he finally struck back, it was a single, precise tap to Frieza's core that disrupted his energy flow, forcing him back into his final form, exhausted and defeated. Vegeta looked down at the crumpled tyrant, not with triumph, but with something akin to pity. You sought power to dominate. I have found power to understand. We are no longer in the same league. He didn't kill Frieza. There was no point. The threat was neutralized, not just physically, but philosophically. He had the tyrant collected and imprisoned, a living testament to the limits of the old way. In the days that followed, the changes became more apparent. The other Z fighters, especially Goku and Gohan, were acutely sensitive to the shift in him and in the world itself. The air seemed to crackle with new potential. "You're not just stronger, Vegeta," Goku said, uncharacteristically serious after a sparring match. "It's like you're playing a different game." "The universe is larger than we knew, Kakarot," Vegeta replied, looking at the stars. "And power is more nuanced." He began to train Trunks not just in Kai control, but in this new awareness. He taught him to feel the energy in the rocks, the air, the water, to see the connections between all living things. The boy was a quick study, his half-earthling heritage giving him a natural affinity for the harmonious aspects of this new power. One evening, as he stood on the balcony of Capsule Corp, looking at the peaceful city lights, Bulma joined him. "You know," she said, leaning against the railing, "for a guy who just achieved what sounds like cosmic enlightenment, you don't seem very happy." Vegeta was silent for a long moment. "I spent my life chasing strength, believing it was a singular peak to be conquered. I now see it as a range of mountains, with infinite peaks, each offering a different view." He glanced at her. "It is humbling." Bulma smiled. Maybe that's the point. He knew then that he would never go back, not to the Star Wars galaxy. His work there was done, its fate now in the hands of its own people, and not to his old self. The Prince of all Saiyans was a title that once meant a ruler of a dead race. Now, it could mean something else. A pioneer, an innovator. He had not just brought a new power home, he had brought back a new definition of power itself. The journey had cost him his certainties, but it had given him a universe of possibilities in return. The Force had used him as a catalyst for its own evolution, and in doing so, had irrevocably evolved him too. The Saiyan Prince was home, and for the first time, the entire cosmos, in all its interconnected, vibrant, and chaotic glory, felt like home as well. Vegeta's journey through the Star Wars galaxy began as an accident and evolved into a cosmic necessity. He arrived as a disruptive force, a variable that neither the Jedi nor the Sith could control or comprehend. His refusal to align with any faction, his Saiyan pride, and his relentless pursuit of strength forced the galaxy's fundamental energy to confront its own stagnation. The Force, bound for millennia by the dualities of light and dark, found in Vegeta a catalyst for its own transcendence. His unique Ki energy, initially a source of interference, became the key to a new synergy, demonstrating that power could be integrative rather than dominating. By defeating not just the Sith, but their very philosophy, he broke the ancient cycle and liberated the galaxy from its predetermined fate. The Empire would fall, the rebellion would rise, but the future was now unwritten, free to be shaped by the choices of its people, not the dictates of an ancient energy field. Vegeta returned to his own universe, not just with new abilities, but with a transformed understanding of strength itself, leaving behind a Star Wars galaxy forever changed, poised on the brink of an era of unprecedented potential and unknown adventures.